Calm Mind Primarina with Misty Terrain Flutter Mane was able to go undefeated in the first phase of the European International Championship. We're going to be trying out that team and seeing how well it can perform, but first let's break down this team that was created by Superstar Pearl and was able to go undefeated thanks to a player known as Matthias. So we have an interesting balanced team here, and it does feature that Primarina and the interesting Flutter Mane set, but let's break it down. First up, let's go over some of the classic mods that you'll see on balance. Incineroar, no surprise, Intimidate being able to lower the opponent's attacks when switched in. Safety Goggles, which is a great item to help out against the Mungus, especially the Spores and the Rage Powders, as well as Sleep Powder. Ghost Terra, being immune to potential normal type moves like Fake Out and Extreme Speed, as well as Fine type moves, is pretty solid. And you have a pretty standard moveset: Flare Blitz, Parting Shot, Taunt, and Fake Out. Pretty good moveset. Fake Out, of course, we already know how good a move that is in VGC for setting up stuff. Parting Shot being able to pivot around and lower the attack stats of the opponent. The Taunt is really nice here because of the fact that it's great into opposing Mungus, as well as the Porygon 2, denying Trick Room and Recover, as well as stuff like opposing Raging Bolts that could go for Calm Mind alongside, because that is a pretty big one you want to stop, because you don't want like Raging Bolt to set up too many Calm Minds because it can get annoying to stop. And then Flare Blitz, being able to have a grass or a fire type move that can punish the grass types like the Amoonguss, as well as the Rillabooms, is pretty nice, especially when paired with the Primarina. Now, the only thing you might notice is this Incineroar spread, which is very, very fast, by the way. Like, this Incineroar is running 212 speed with an Impish Nature, which is not a common one. The idea behind this Rillaboom is able to outspeed no speed Rillaboom, so you could threaten a Fake Out potentially on like the no speed Rillabooms, because a lot of Rillabooms do run bulk in the format. And it can really help out with the Primarina, because if you can Fake Out a Rillaboom, you can deny like a Wood Hammer, so you can get a Calm Mind up. So that's the idea of like having a faster Rillaboom, as well as like having the ability to go for Flare Blitz before they can go for a Wood Hammer is also pretty nice, or a U-turn. And across the board, otherwise, you do have like a good amount of HP, 244 HP, Impish, so you still have some good physical defense. And then the remainder going to special defense. It's this Incineroar that's able to be a bit faster, again, to help out with Rillaboom, so that the Primarina is a bit safer to be able to set up potentially. Then next Pokemon we'll talk about is going to be the Rillaboom. Speaking of Rillaboom, yeah, we have our own Rillaboom, which of course is going to be a great pairing. Assault Vest to be able to take special attacks better. The Fire Terra type, which is just really good against super effective Ice and Fire type coverage across the board, as well as Resist Fairy, which is pretty solid. And then Grassy Surge to summon the Grassy Terrain to heal the Pokemon on your side on the ground, as well as like power up the Grass type moves. Fantastic. Wood Hammer and Grassy Glide, really strong grass type moves, especially Grassy Glide for the priority. High horsepower to be able to hit the steel types and the fire types that could be a little bit annoying to be able to hit, especially you want to hit Raging Bolts as well, which is always solid. And then Fake Out to 4, of course, be able to help set up the other Pokemon that you do have. And across the board, this Eevee spread, a little bit interesting. It is like a good amount of HP. 132 HP gives you a 192 HP stat, which means you get the maximum amount of grassy terrain that Rillaboom can get access to. 116 with Inanimate Nature is a jump point in its attack stat, and then the combination of 132 HP and 196 special defense does actually allow you to survive like a Terra Poison Sludge Bomb from Life Orb Landers Incarnate. So that's the idea of like having a super specially defensive Rillaboom to be able to take on the Landers Incarnates better. Flutter Mane Chiyu stuff as well, so you could threaten them with high horsepower Wood Hammer, Raging Bolt, and like a few others. It's actually pretty nice. And then 60 speed, which is of course pretty solid, because you can outspeed a few of the other Rillabooms out there. And it does make sense because you can go for like Icy Wind with the Flutter Mane paired with this Rillaboom to be able to outspeed stuff like Landers Incarnate after that Icy Wind speed drop. So we just covered our Fire and Grass mod, and we actually have another one that usually pairs really well on balance, which is going to be the Ogerpon Heartflame with the Heartflame Mask and Mold Breaker, which is actually a pretty decent ability. You're able to go for Grassy Glide, which is a priority move in grassy terrain against like stuff like Queenly Majesty and Armor Tail from Farigiraf and Serena. Also, you're able to hit Heatran with the Ivy Cudgel through its Flash Fire. It's actually kind of niche here, and yeah, Ogerpon Heartflame is usually paired with Rillaboom plus Incineroar. It's pretty good typing across the board. Doesn't usually share as many of the same weaknesses as Rillaboom Incineroar does because of its unique combination of grass and fire typing. And it actually is able to be a fairy resist on the team, which is very much appreciated. Threaten with the Ivy Cudgel especially, and double Grassy Glide is pretty powerful. And what makes Ogerpons really nice on this team is because of the fact that it can go for Follow Me on this team and pair with Primarina. because of the fact that you have Follow Me with the Ogerpon Heart Flame, you can be able to take on the grass type attacks and the electric type moves that are super effective against Primarina normally and redirect them with Ogerpon. You can also threaten like opposing Rillabooms with your Ivy Cudgel that can threaten the Primarina as well, which is extremely solid. And yeah, like this Ogerpon's a really offensive one. It's able to still tank attacks pretty well. 180 HP, 52 defense. It's usually like for some surging strikes from Urshifu. I think it's like the Mystic Water ones. Then you have 108 with a Jolly nature with speed, and that allows you to outspeed like Jolly max speed Landorus variant, I believe, as well as like 156 attack, just so you're able to do a good amount of damage with a Ivy Cudgel or Grassy Glide, especially with a +1 Ivy Cudgel Grassy Glide, being able to pick up the knockouts on stuff like Urshifu Rapid Strike that are Choice Scarf, for example. It is a very heavy hitting mon that's great as a support mon. Dishing out a ton of damage is also another option that it has, especially thanks to the embody aspect it gets after the terrestrialization. Alright, next Pokemon we have is going to be the Landorus Incarnate with Life Orb and Sheer Force. Deadly combination because the Sheer Force does apply extra damage to any attack that Landorus does have that has a secondary effect in response of removing that secondary effect, and also prevents the Life Orb recoil damage you normally take. It prevents that as well. So it's a really cool combination. And Landorus Incarnate, one of the heaviest hitters in this format, especially with the ground and the poison coverage, be able to threaten so much, especially like those Raging Bolts and a few other things that could threaten the Primarina. So having that combination with the Terra Steel, which is just a great defensive typing against like fairy type moves, the ice coverage that's super effective against Landorus. Yeah, it's just like really solid in general. And pretty much not much to say other than the fact that this Landorus runs Sandsear. Some Landorus do run Sandsear for the more offensive capabilities. Usually on these balanced teams, you'll usually see Substitute, but this one has Sandsear because of the fact that your only really spread move is going to be Hyper Voice, and unless the Primarina is boosted, it is a pretty weak spread move. So having one that just has initial offensive pressure, because the team does lack immediate damage output otherwise, just having the ability to go for like an immediate Sandsear Storm and threaten like a lot of Pokemon can be very valuable. And Landorus Incarnate is able to rip through a lot of Pokemon in the format, and it's why it's like one of the strongest mons currently in Regulation F. So for the EV spread, it's a bit interesting because this Landorus is actually running Timid Nature, but it's not running max speed, which is an interesting choice. It only outspeeds up to max speed based 90s in general. It still outspeeds stuff like the Modest Chiyus, the Animate Urshifus, and some of the Ogerpons in that speed tier range if they're running like 154, for example, speed stat wise. So it is able to outspeed those at least. And then it's just still a lot of special attack. You kind of need the special attack on Landorus Incarnate because you really want to be able to get those knockouts or 2 shots. And then 116 HP, which allows the Landorus to have some bulk, which is of course very appreciated, to be able to tank like surging strikes after the terrestrialization. So yeah, like this Landorus is definitely an interesting EV spread, but it does the job right, and you can play a bit more offensively against like opposing Landorus Incarnates because you are the faster Landorus usually. Now we have the Flutter Mane with the speed booster energy from Photosynthesis with the fairy terrestrialization, pretty standard otherwise. Moonblast, Icy Wind, Misty Terrain, and Protect. And the real question is, why Misty Terrain? And I think with the general format of what was going to be popular for EUIC, one of the biggest teams that was really going into the format was going to be like this Porygon 2 Ursaluna team with Tornadus, Amoonguss, Urshifu, and Incineroar. And one of the ideas of having this Misty Terrain Flutter Mane is, one, you have Taunt on the Incineroar, so you have a backup to Amoonguss if necessary, so you don't need double Taunt with Flutter Mane and Incineroar. But one of the cool things I think is because Misty Terrain has some applications which are really good into that team, because one, Misty Terrain is really solid for being able to prevent the Ursaluna on the ground from getting burned, because those Ursaluna teams don't usually run any terrain controlling moves or abilities because they don't usually pair with Rillaboom. So once Misty Terrain is up, if the Ursaluna comes in, it can't activate the Flame Orb because Pokemon on the ground can't get status. So that's one reason why it helps out against Ursaluna. The other reason is because it also helps out against Amoonguss, because if Amoonguss can't go for Spore into your Flutter Mane or your Primarina, then that's actually a really big deal. And you could also Terra Steel your Landorus, so you are now immune to the Amoonguss Spores, which is also another one. And then the third thing is, Misty Terrain is also really nice on this team because you run Terra Dragon on your Primarina, so you actually can half the damage from opposing Dragon type mons if your Primarina is terrestrialize, and that includes opposing raging bolts. So there's a lot of applications you can actually run with Misty Terrain, which are actually extremely valuable. You can also prevent stuff like getting burned from stuff into your Rillaboom. There's like quite a few things that are nice. Preventing Ice Beam freezes. Like Misty Terrain is actually very niche here, but it actually works extremely well because it was good into like that core team that everyone was preparing for, as well as like it really helps support this Primarina in a way. So I thought it was a really cool adjustment there. There's probably a few more applications that could be utilized that are very niche, but across the board, really cool tech here. The EU spread here is 156 with a Tim Nature that allows you to speed creep like the max speed Roaring Moons and like a few things that would outspeed it otherwise. 188 HP and 164 defense. You want the defense investment to be able to take moves like Surging Strikes from Urshifu and more. So you do invest in defense, and yeah, it's more of a supportive Flutter Mane, but it is able to help out specifically again into those matchups, which is really nice to see. And Icy Wind Speed Control is still valuable for your Landers and your Ogerpon to outspeed threats and go for really heavy damage. Final Pokemon on the team is going to be the Leftovers Primarina with the Liquid Voice. Changes all of its sound type moves into water type attacks. So Hyper Voice is now a water type move with the Terra Dragon. Great against the Fire, Water, Grass core, as well as electric type moves that are super effective against Primarina with Hyper Voice, Moonblast, Calm Mind, and Protect. So Primarina is a Pokemon that fell off a lot in Regulation H, especially with the 2.0 that came back, and then we don't really see it at all in Regulation F. It's got a fantastic defensive typing and offensive typing as well. Like, it's great in both ways, and it has pretty good special attack and special defense. Its HP is like not the best, but it's pretty decent, but its physical defense is where it's lacking with 74 defense. But yeah, we just don't see Primarina much because of the power creep. It just also the fact that Urshifu Rapid Strike is just like a generally better water type move or a water type mon in general, because Surging Strike is also like really powerful. So we do not see Primarina that much. But what's cool about Primarina is that Primarina is just able to, you know, kind of take these attacks, because this one's really physically defensive oriented. As you can see, 252 HP, 236 defense, and then the rest goes into a bit of special attack and special defense speed dump. But across the board, this Primarina is designed to be able to sit there, take attacks, and paired with Intimidate support, Fake Out support, and the Grassy Terrain recovery, alongside Misty Terrain Flutter Mane to shut down the spores on the Amoonguss, as well as especially the Ursalunas that could do a ton of damage after the Guts boosted attacks. Yeah, the Primarina is going to be able to stick around. It's really good defensive typing, especially with, again, great into Urshifu naturally, and then with the Terra Dragon, really good into like the balance cores of the Urshifu, Rillaboom, and Incineroar combos that we commonly see. So it can actually put in a lot of work against it. It's also good into like the Urshifu Torn teams as well. Because of its high special defense, it can Calm Mind up, threaten a lot of damage and knockouts with Moonblast Hyper Voice. Yeah, if you let this Primarina set up a few Calm Minds, especially again, Leftovers Grassy Terrain will be able to heal it quite a bit, and you have multiple ways to support it, it can become a massive threat. So that is kind of the idea behind the Primarina on the team. It's also pretty nice into some other stuff, like Moonblast is able to threaten a lot into Raging Bolt. Thunderclap is in like one you have to really worry about. You have Taunt as well as the Incineroar, and you have Misty Terrain on the Flutter Mane to prevent like the Dragon Pulses from doing as much damage. Yeah, you have a lot of ways that Primarina can be helped out, so it can actually be able to sweep teams. We'll see if it's actually able to work out in today's video. But let's talk about the general team and the common leads. So the common leads on the team, like overall, I think Primarina is like a really good one, but it's a general balance team. You have like a lot of different leads. Any of the fake out mons with Incineroar, Rillaboom paired with anything else, whether it's Primarina set up to Calm Minds, whether it's Ogerpon for like initial damage, whether it's the Flutter Mane to start setting up some Icy Wind speed controls and then pivot into like one of your strong attackers, or the Landis Incarnate to go for immediate damage. Either way, those are really good combinations. You also have Flutter Mane that could just lead, go for Icy Wind, go for a strong hit with Landers, or the Ogerpon is also very effective. You can also go with like Ogerpon plus anything, like just for redirection, and draw off a strong hit with the Landers, or the Primarina can just set up the Calm Minds. You also can just like, again, lead pretty much anything with like Landers and Primarina. Primarina can just go for Calm Minds immediately. The Landers can just go for strong damage output. Yeah, there's not much to say. There's like a lot you could do, but Primarina, pretty good lead in general. One of the fake out mons is also pretty ideal, or you could go on the offensive with Flutter Mane plus like one of your hard hitters. So those are always really strong leads. And then in the back, it's really about like just either going for initial damage output, set up to Calm Mind Primarina in the back, going for strong damage immediately, going for Grassy Glide KOs to clean up the end games, or setting up Primarina early and then, or in the mid game, just to be able to dish out a ton of damage, thanks to getting multiple Calm Minds, walling a bit, reducing the damage, and then set again, just dish out a ton of damage. That's kind of the idea of the team. If you'd like to check out the details of the team and the creator, there'll be a link in the description down below. But otherwise, I do want to make a note. You can probably tell by the sound of my voice, I am a bit sick, and we will be doing post commentary as well. So yeah, we're going to get into the games. Let's get started with this Japanese tour that I played in. Alright, so we have our first opponent, which reveals the Urshifu, Zapdos, Rillaboom, Chien-Pao, Alolan Ninetales, and Incineroar. So here, it's kind of an interesting matchup. The Zapdos is actually pretty annoying. I actually recently played one at EUIC, and it was like an Eerie Impulse set. And I really just have to figure out how I'm playing around the Zapdos, because the Zapdos is probably one of the most annoying Pokemon to deal with for my team. It's not like I do an incredible amount of damage. It's kind of annoying for my Fire, Water, Grass core to hit the Zapdos. And I also have to worry about like the snow stuff that they have from the Chien-Pao, as well as the Alolan Ninetales. It's a weird combination. They could have Aurora Veil. It doesn't seem good for my Landers Incarnate. Probably one of my better offensive mons that could actually break through the Zapdos, being immune to the Thunderbolt. So it's a little bit weird here. So I'm deciding, okay, I probably have to bring Primarina. Primarina is generally good against like the snow stuff and a lot of the common cores. And I'm like, okay, I think I go with Primarina and Incineroar. It's just a pretty good lead option. Have the Intimidate. Rillaboom, I want to make sure I have it for the Urshifu. And I decide to bring the Ogerpon Heartflame because I feel like in this game, beating the Zapdos is probably going to come down to either me having the redirection with the Ogerpon Heartflame or just being able to set up Primarina with multiple Calm Minds. But of course, if it is Eerie Impulse Zapdos, I need like really good offensive pressure into that Zapdos, and the idea here is to use my Ogerpon Heartflame. Another reason why I like leading Incineroar here is because I do have that taunt option with the Incineroar, so I can actually go for taunt into the Zapdos to prevent the Eerie Impulses, so I can actually get a few Calm Minds up. So that is also another thing. I need to figure out the Zapdos moveset, and I can't really risk going for Fake Out because one, it could have Static as an ability, as well as it could have potential just Covert Cloak. So that would be pretty rough for me if I do fall into one of those traps. So we do see actually Rillaboom Zapdos lead against my Primarina and Incineroar. And I say, okay, Primarina, not in the best spot. Incineroar in a pretty good spot. Now, I will say, as I mentioned before, I was sick when I was recording this. And for some reason, like I'm just forgetting things at the moment, and I forget that my Primarina is actually Terra Dragon. For the entire time, I kept thinking it was Terra Poison. So if I just went for Terra Dragon, like it seems pretty fine here, but of course there is the risk of the Ice Mons in the back with the snow, so I'm not going to go for Terra immediately. I feel like my best play here was to either just go for a Protect and Parting Shot, or to potentially get in the Ogerpon Heartflame and Parting Shot. And that's exactly what I do. It's because of the fact that Ogerpon would be able to take a Thunderbolt, would be able to take a Wood Hammer, and puts me in a more offensive spot if they decide to fake out my Incineroar and just go for like an Eerie Impulse or a Thunderbolt into the Primarina. So they actually go for Tailwind immediately, which I am completely okay with taking, as that is a pretty decent trade for me as they go for U-turn. So could have been better, of course. Like if they went for the Wood Hammer, I would have been in a much better position. But granted, like this is still pretty good. I get that Parting Shot off in the Zapdos. Going to be a -1 special attack. Going to be doing a lot less damage to my team, and I get to reposition. As we see the Incineroar come in on their side, I'm like, okay, this is actually pretty good for me because now I'm going to be able to get a Parting Shot off into the Zapdos. And I can go out into my Primarina once again. And because I got that Parting Shot off into the Zapdos, it's a lot safer to be actually able to take a Thunderbolt if they decide to go for Thunderbolt. So I felt like that this was a pretty good turn for me, as I am just going to go Primarina because Rillaboom's not a Pokemon I want to bring in against these two threats to Rillaboom here. So yeah, immediately I'm just going to go out into the Incineroar, and I'm actually debating about like what I go for, and I decide to go for a Calm Mind immediately. And the reason I decided to go for Calm Mind is because of the fact that I would like that special attack boost, and I want to see if they, hey, maybe they have Hurricane on the Zapdos. They could go for like a Fake Out, but I feel like maybe Protect Switch to Instinct could be a little bit obvious. So I do want to get some kind of momentum. I don't think they're going to double the Primarina on with Fake Out Thunderbolt. So I'm like, okay, if I get a Calm Mind up, then I'm really able to stack the leftovers Grassy Terrain, and then my opponent, until they get a back into their Rillaboom, really can't do much to my Primarina. So I felt like that this was a pretty reasonable play on my side. So I am going to go into Incineroar. And even if they go for like, let's say, Fake Out Thunderbolt, like Primarina should be able to tank it and then just be able to heal back some of the HP. So they do go for fake out of Primarina, as they do go for a Hurricane attempt into my Ogerpon Heartflame, and the Incineroar dodges. So we know that it is Tailwind, Hurricane, you want to assume it has Thunderbolt, and then last move is probably Roost, I would imagine, so it means probably no Eerie Impulse, which makes it easier because my Primarina can actually set up against the Zapdos, as I do recover the HP with the Grassy Terrain, and now I'm in a pretty decent spot, but I'm like trying to figure out what I want to do here. Do I want to just go for damage immediately? Because I'm like, okay, they could maybe switch into Rillaboom for either of these Pokemon. They could attempt a Parting Shot. I could definitely see like Zapdos switching on to Rillaboom and then a Parting Shot out into their Zapdos once again to reset that special attack drop. So I decide, you know what? I'm going to go for Fake Out Hyper Voice because I think Fake Out Hyper Voice is pretty reasonable. If they go for Thunderbolt into my Primarina, shouldn't do too much damage with that special attack drop from before, and getting the chip damage into their Incineroar is actually really nice because of the fact it's one of the few Pokemon that can actually switch into Ogerpon Heartflame reliably. So I go for a Fake Out as the Incineroar does stay in, and I do get a Hyper Voice off into the Incineroar for some pretty good damage, as well as the Zapdos, which did do a lot of damage, by the way, with that Thunderbolt. That did a lot of damage to my Primarina, even at -1 special attack. Primarina actually has a really good special defense, so I was a bit surprised. So I'm like, is this actually offensive Zapdos? Because it didn't take the Hyper Voice like incredibly well either. So now I have a pretty safe play. I just get another Parting Shot off into Zapdos, and I can pretty much just go for a Protect here. I was also debating about, like, do I switch out the Primarina into, like, one of my Grass types on a Thunderbolt, but I'm like, it's a pretty safe play just to Protect and get the 12.5% recovery from the leftovers in the Grassy Terrain combined. So I'm like, you know, I might as well take it. They switch out the Incineroar to go out into Rillaboom, and I'm like, okay, this is perfect, as I do protect the Primarina. And yeah, even though it's like still not the greatest spot right here, the fact that I'm getting recovery because it allows Primarina to be healthy to take on the Urshifu is actually going to be like really important here, or any of the ice types that could be in the back. So get another Parting Shot off. Now the Zapdos is at -2 special attack, and I'm like, okay, now I get a free pivot here, and I get to go out into either Ogerpon or Rillaboom, and I decide Ogerpon is definitely the mon I want to bring out here because it does threaten Ivy Cudgel into both of these slots, and the Zapdos shouldn't be able to KO my Ogerpon now thanks to the 2 Parting Shots off I got into the Zapdos, as Primarina does recover a bunch of HP from the leftovers in Grassy Terrain, and we're kind of playing a slow game, but it's really just about being able to get like better damage trades onto my opponent right now. Now I'm debating about like, okay, I can Ivy Cudgel either slot. They're probably going to go Incineroar here for one of them. And I'm just deciding maybe it's more likely Rillaboom decides to switch out here. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go for Ivy Cudgel and Zapdos. It's not that bad if Zapdos switches out in Incineroar because I still get like a bit more chip into Incineroar. And, you know, every bit of damage on Incineroar does matter in this situation because it means the Incineroar can't switch in eventually, right? It's already pretty low. And eventually, like, soon I'm going to be able to Ivy Cudgel through their entire team with my Ogerpon. So I'm like, okay, I'll go for the Ivy Cudgel and swap out because I don't want Primarina taking, like, a Wood Hammer or a Thunderbolt. So I am just going to swap out here. We see the Zapdos decides to swap out into the Incineroar and get the Intimidating Ogerpon. And I'm like, okay, did they Terra Fire? Did they maybe fake out the Ogerpon with the Rillaboom, which would make a lot of sense here? But yeah, I am able to switch out second, which is actually really nice because of the speed order. So I am actually able to get Intimidate onto the opposing Incineroar that just switched in, which is really nice. So these Pokemon can't do much damage. I get an Ivy Cudgel off into the Incineroar and a bit lower, which is nice, as they went for a Wood Hammer into the Incineroar. If they went for a U-turn, it could have been a little bit tricky, but still manageable. But yeah, this makes it so much easier because now, right now, I can threaten a Ivy Cudgel Parting Shot into the Rillaboom because the Rillaboom doesn't really do much. Grassy Terrain also disappeared on the field. So if they decide to switch out, it's like, okay, I either get some damage onto the Rillaboom or I get to reposition with my Incineroar because, like, if they bring out Urshifu, for instance, on the Ivy Cudgel, which is like the only Pokemon that can really switch into Ivy Cudgel, I get a free pivot into my Primarina, which is in a really good spot against a Urshifu and Incineroar combo, or I could bring out my Rillaboom if I really, really want to as well. But being able to get, again, any recovery on the Primarina is still pretty valuable. My opponent's not in the greatest spot right now. And again, Ivy Cudgel is just very hard for them to switch into. So either they fake out or they go for a hard switch to Urshifu and maybe try to do something with the Incineroar. So we are going to see the Rillaboom does switch out. It is going to be out into the Urshifu. And I'm like, okay, that is perfectly fine. They fake out my Ogerpon. Even better because I am guaranteed to reposition with my Incineroar now and get that parting shot off into the Urshifu, which doesn't matter for certain strikes, but it does matter for close combat, which is actually kind of big because it means that my Rillaboom can switch into the Urshifu pretty safely. So I'm here like, okay, go out into Primarina, get another round of lefties, and right now, Primarina in a pretty good spot. They don't exactly have a Moonblast switch in either. I could go for Hyper Voice. There's like quite a few things I can do with this Primarina because it's in such a good position against these two Pokemon. So here I'm debating about what I exactly want to go for, and I'm like, okay, I could go for either an Ivy Cudgel double up with like a Moonblast into the Urshifu slot. I could decide to switch out into Rillaboom. I decided to make the Rillaboom play because I like having Ogerpon just healthy to deal with Zapdos potentially in the back. And I just go for a Moonblast because I know my opponent doesn't really have a good switch in for Moonblast on the Urshifu. Of course, they could have a Defensive Terra, and I would like to scout for a Defensive Terra if they do have a Defensive Terra, but a lot of the Terra types aren't exactly great for the Urshifu, right? If it's Water Terra, I still have Grass coverage on Pokemon. If it's Steel Terra, then they're going to be vulnerable to Ivy Cudgel. And I'd also just really be pretty good against almost every typing except maybe Terra Poison, which is like pretty rare here. So I will switch out my Ogerpon and just go out into my Rillaboom. If they go for like a Flare Blitz plus Surge Strike double up, it's not even too bad for me because of the fact that I'd still get the Urshifu, which isn't too bad, and the Incineroar is intimidated from my earlier Incineroar switch in. So they're going to switch out their Incineroar to go out into Rillaboom, which makes sense because I was threatening a Hyper Voice knockout potentially there, and they do go for a U-turn. So we do confirm that the Urshifu is probably choice locked, and it is probably going to be Choice Scarf, because if it was Choice Band, it would have probably done more damage to my Rillaboom. So what switching into Moonblast is going to be a good question, as it is going to be the Zapdos once again, as I do get a Moonblast off into the Zapdos, and it actually does a really good amount of damage to the Zapdos. So I'm very pleased about the turn. And here it's like, okay, Primarina still in a tricky spot, Rillaboom in a tricky spot. My opponent's finally got momentum here where it's like, okay, I'm in a bit of an awkward position, but the Zapdos is pretty weak here, so I'm going to make a double swap here because I am expecting more of like a roost situation from the Zapdos at this point, because if they don't roost, then I could just basically the Zapdos can't switch in. I get an Ivy Cudgel off. I'm in a pretty good spot. I think it's really unlikely that they Hurricane my Primarina. If they do go for Hurricane, it'll probably be to the Incineroar slot, which is completely fine by me, and I felt like that this is a pretty reasonable trade-off right here. So bring in the Incineroar to get intimidated into the Rillaboom, and I bring out my Ogerpon to start threatening some Ivy Cudgel, like a lot of offensive pressure, as they go for the Hurricane into the Incineroar, and I'm like, I should tank this, and I don't take it as well as I thought. That's just like a really powerful Zapdos. It definitely has a lot of special attack. The confusion was the annoying part here, because if it wasn't for the confusion, I think I have like a pretty safe line the next turn to just fake out whatever's coming in for the Rillaboom and just Ivy Cudgel the Zapdos, because I have a very fast Incineroar. Like, I'm very fast. We confirmed it wasn't Cobra Cloak earlier because the Incineroar flinched from the fake out from my Incineroar before. So I feel like I had a super safe line. Now it's like, do I want to gamble or do I play it safer? As my opponent decides to bring out Urshifu, and I'm like, okay, since this Choice Scarf Urshifu can't knock out my Ogerpon, I'm pretty sure I could go for... They have to also worry about, like, do I have a Grass move and just Oko the Urshifu, which is also a big thing for them. So I'm like, okay, I think my best play here, just switch out the Incineroar and go for the Ivy Cudgel into the Zapdos, because if they switch, it's definitely an Incineroar coming in for one slot. I decided to go Primarina for my Incineroar slot because it's like, okay, if they bring out Incineroar for the Zapdos slot, my Primarina is still in a really good offensive position against the next two. And if, like, hey, they switch out the Urshifu and Incineroar, Ivy Cudgel should still knock out the Zapdos at that range because it doesn't look like a bulky Zapdos. It definitely had a lot of special attack investment in order to be able to do that much damage to my Incineroar with the Hurricane, even if I'm like not a super Spadef Incineroar. So yeah, I bring in Primarina, go for the Ivy Cudgel into the Zapdos, and even an intimidated Ogerpon can still knock out the Zapdos. So that is a huge stretch just gone. And at this point in the game, I would probably realistically win if I just click Terra Dragon with the Primarina. Again, I'm just forgetting at this point that I am Terra Dragon. I thought I was Terra Poison for like quite a bit. So yeah, but overall, I'm in a good spot now because right now my Primarina, very solid offensive position, and if they decide to bring in Rillaboom, I still have an Incineroar that can switch in. They actually go out an Urshifu here, and I'm like, Okay, that is completely fine. I think at this point, Primarina's in a safe spot. I'm like, okay, I think I just go for a Hyper Voice here realistically, or do I just go for the Moonblast? Like, there's like quite a few places I could just go for, and usually with Urshifu, with Choice Scarf, it's usually either Terra Steel or Terra Water. I'm just trying to figure it out here. I'm just going to go for a Grassy Glide and get damage into the Urshifu because Incineroar can just go for a Fake Out, and I really don't feel like I want to be able to risk something in the back here. So I feel like I can just go on the offense. Like, basically, Ogerpon has done the best job of being able to eliminate the Zapdos. It'll definitely be able to live any attack here from the Urshifu, even if they go for Terra Water Surging Strikes. So I go for the Grassy Glide, they go for a Fake Out, and the Urshifu doesn't Terra, so I'm kind of assuming at this point it's probably Terra Water, as they go for a close combat into the Ogerpon. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. They tried to catch either Incineroar or my, I think, Rillaboom switching in, so I think they tried to cover the switch and just went for the close combat. Didn't exactly work out for them, and now I'm in a pretty good spot because right now Primarina is just looking like it gets a KO here. Basically at this point, the Hyper Voice and the Moonblast are going to do a lot, and I also noticed that my Primarina was faster than the Incineroar, so I'm like, ooh, I'm in a really good spot. And I think like even here I could actually go for leverage. It's like, okay, if they decide, hey, I'm going to go for a close combat with the Urshifu, then I get a Hyper Voice potentially and could knock out the Incineroar as well. And it's like, okay, if they switch out into Rillaboom, I get a bunch of damage. Because I don't think they want to let me just Grassy Glide their Urshifu and Hyper Voice. They would just guarantee lose the game on the spot right there. I could also go for Grassy Glide Moonblast into the Urshifu as well, because that would do a lot of damage, yet it wouldn't knock out the Rillaboom, and then the Incineroar could maybe like parting shot here. So I kind of, there are a few interesting switches that it can do, but I really liked the idea of just, hey, I'd be able to go for a Hyper Voice plus that Ivy Cudgel into the Urshifu slot, because I have a really big suspicion that Rillaboom is switching in, and getting the damage on Rillaboom is really nice. And yeah, they do switch out the Urshifu into the Rillaboom, as I do get Ivy Cudgel off so much damage, Hyper Voice, and I actually failed to miss the knockout on the Incineroar. That was like a bit of bad judgment on my part. I really thought I was getting that knockout into the Incineroar with that Hyper Voice, but that is the thing about using Bold Primarina here, is that I'm not able to pick up that knockout. But yeah, Incineroar switches out here, and they're going to get back Urshifu. Again, if I just remembered that I was Terra Dragon, not Terra Poison, I could just go for a the Terra Dragon, probably be in a really good spot to win. Because if I was Terra Poison, I'm a bit worried about Terra Water Surging Strikes doing a lot of damage to my Primarina, so I didn't think it was worth it here. And now it's kind of like it's still a fine spot at the end of the day. I just pretty much have to sack something, but I'm already up on material, so it's not even too bad. I'm just going to protect Primarina, and I'm actually like debating about, okay, do I go out into Incineroar or do I go out into Rillaboom? And I was like, which one would I rather sack here? I decided to go Rillaboom because Rillaboom like is only 40 Urshifu realistically. Like, even though it gives the Grassy Terrain power up for the Primarina, it's not that big of a deal at this point because of the fact that I just don't really fear it too much, because next turn I could just go for like Grassy Glide and Terra and attack, and I feel like it's perfectly fine if that's the case. Just always having the Grassy Glide pressure against the Urshifu with my Ogerpon Heartflame, I felt like was just pretty good in general. They're actually going to switch out to the Rillaboom on their side, which is a good play, and they go out into Incineroar. So they read my Protect on the Primarina, they get an Intimidate off, and now they have Fake Out Pressure available. So here it's like, okay, maybe a little bit strange, but it's still fine, as they finally reveal the Terra. So I get to find out finally what is going to go Terra in this game. It's going to be the Urshifu, and it's going to reveal Terra Water. So as I suspected, it is Terra Water, and it's still pretty reasonable for me to deal with, because that just means Grassy Glide is going to be a factor. It means Moonblast isn't going to KO, but Grassy Glide into like Hyper Voice will definitely get the KO into the Urshifu. So they go for Surging Strikes here, and I'm like, okay, they locked in the Surging Strikes. I'm in a pretty good spot. Even if they locked into close combat, they wouldn't have been in like that amazing of a position. So I feel, because then they would have been threatened by Moonblast the next turn, and both Rillaboom and Urshifu go down to Moonblast at this point. Feeling pretty good. So they went for Surging Strikes. I have the faster Fake Out available for my Rillaboom. We saw the speed tier on the lead, and I can just threaten Fake Out plus Moonblast. I could also threaten Hyper Voice. I also was taking a look at their timer, and they only have 53 seconds available, so they don't have much available to them. So I'm like, okay, What am I doing? Am I clicking Moonblast? Am I clicking Hyper Voice? I pretty much know I'm just going to click Fake Out into the Urshifu. It's just like, okay, what am I doing with the Primarina? I just decided to Fake Out to the Urshifu and go for a Moonblast because right now I'm in a really dominant spot. And I didn't even realize how long this game was going. We just trade Fake Outs. If they switched into Rillaboom, it wasn't even still too bad for me because they still can't do much here on the board. Because I could go for like Terra with my Primarina and then attack, and it'd be completely fine at this point in the game because I already revealed that the Urshifu is going to be the Terra Water set, so I can always threaten it with Grassy Glide in the end. And now I'm just in like, okay, now I pretty much just can go for Hyper Voice plus a Grassy Glide. If they switch in the Rillaboom on the Urshifu side, they go down to the Grassy Glide plus Hyper Voice, I believe, at that point. So they are going to retreat the Incineroar out into the Rillaboom. But at this point, like, the Urshifu is pretty much going down. They basically have to hope that they can get a knockout here and survive the turn, right? So Grassy Glide going to come out. It doesn't take the knockout into the Urshifu, which is completely fine. They go for Surging Strikes here into my Rillaboom, and I'm like, does this even KO? It didn't even look like it was going to KO based on the first hit. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think this KOs, which means I'm going to be even more up on material at this point with the timer. And even if they got the KO, like, I'm still way far ahead because I get the KO into Urshifu with the Hyper Voice. It's just too low at this point. So I'm up, I would be up 3-2. I'm now up 4-2. And at this point, the game is just sealed because they can't really do anything. Even if we didn't have timer as a factor, I would just win with Primarina at this point because if I was the Terra Poison set, I would just Terra Poison and just win. I'm Terra Dragon, so it's even better because Terra Dragon is even better. And we also knew that the Rillaboom isn't high horsepower because it is the U-turn set. So with Terra Poison, I would just like guarantee pretty much lock this game because Primarina is faster than the Incineroar. So all I have to do, protect, switch to Incineroar. And even if they like double read it, they don't have enough Euro time realistically. And yeah, they just forfeit the game because they realized that. So was able to play a really long game with Primarina. And Primarina was just kind of like every time I got Primarina and Ogerpon in a really good spot, I was always able to find a huge amount of damage and take better trades than my opponent was able to, which was huge. All right, so we have Spam, which is like the same team basically that got second place at EUIC. We have Indity Female, Landers Varian, the Urshifu, Heartflame Ogerpon, Iron Crown, and the Tornadus. And here I'm like, I think I have a pretty good matchup. I think Primarina should be pretty solid here as long as I am able to handle the Ogerpon because Ogerpon is the biggest threat here. And let me just remind you, I keep thinking that I'm Terra Poison on this team, so I'm like, okay, I do have to be a little bit worried about the Iron Crown mode, so that's like the only real thing I think I have to really deal with, but otherwise I should be fine. I bring Primarina here, and I'm like, Misty Terrain Flutter Mane could actually be pretty decent here as a backup because of the fact that I always will have terrain control, even if I lose my Rillaboom. And I'm not like a big fan of Landers Incarnate in this matchup. It can definitely do things, but against the Tailwind offense, it's not really that great. I think Incineroar is just a great lead in general to get the Intimidate on the Ogerpon Heartflame, Rillaboom for terrain control as well as the Urshifu matchup. And then my last Pokemon is going to be that Flutter Mane because I like having the ability to outspeed my opponent and the Misty Terrain option. Ogerpon could have been also pretty decent, I think, but I just didn't really prefer it at the time because I wasn't sure I was going to Terra. But we see it interestingly, which is going to be Tornadus and the Ogerpon Heartflame immediately versus my Incineroar and Primarina. I do get an Intimidate off into the Ogerpon Heartflame, but here I'm like, okay, this is kind of weird because my Primarina, not exactly the most well positioned against these Pokemon. And I'm like, okay, it's a bit strange. I'm like thinking, okay, what do they have in the back? Because I'm like, I think it's probably less likely it's going to be the Iron Crown with Entity mode. Because of the fact that if they brought those two in the back specifically, I think it's like really unlikely that they are able to hit my Incineroar, right? Because none of those Pokemon would be able to touch Incineroar unless they change the team to have like Terra Water, Terra Blast on the Iron Crown, or if they're Stomping Tantrum on the Ogerpon Heartflame. So I'm going to protect, and I'm actually going to go for a Parting Shot immediately. I go for Torn because I'm like, okay, there's like a world, I guess, where if they do have Entity, they could switch an Entity here. And I would also like to Parting Shot the Torn because of the fact that it's like a bit annoying to switch into Bleakwind Storms. So I go for a Protect and Parting Shot. They go for a Double Protect to Sky for the Fake Out. I'm like, okay, I don't think they have Entity because I feel like if they had Entity, they could have definitely swapped in. But now I'm in a bit of a weird spot because right now I am just, yeah, it's a little bit difficult here. So I'm like as I said before, I'm sick while I'm playing this and narrating this. And let me just say, for some reason, I'm thinking this Terra Dragon is Terra Poison. And I'm like, I think I'm forced to go for it. I'm like, I think it's fine because even if they bring in their Landorus, like, at least I have Rillaboom, I have Fake Outs with both Pokemon, and I won't have to worry about the Entity because it's most likely they didn't bring the Entity as the last Pokemon, right? If they brought Landorus as well. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go for my Terra with Primarina. And even though there's this giant Terra Dragon coming out of Primarina's head, I still think it's Terra Poison for some reason. They go for Bleakwind, they double miss. It's just the nature of Bleakwind Storm. They go for a Wood Hammer, and I'm like, okay, that doesn't do any damage because I do resist it because I'm Terra Poison. I'm Terra Dragon, no, but I get a parting shot off into the Torn, which is able to get a special attack drop into the Torn, and I'm like, okay, now I get to go out into any of my other Pokemon, and I decide to bring out the Rillaboom because I don't want to use my booster energy on the Flutter Mane. And I'm like, again, I don't think it's likely going to be the Entity back because of the fact that it just seems really weak to the it just didn't seem like it'd be great into my Incineroar with what they have. So I do get a Calm Mind up with my Primarina, and now I'm like, okay, Primarina should be in a really good spot here to just click damage, because if it is like Landorus Urshifu back, all I have to do is Hyper Voice, because Hyper Voice should now like two-shot almost everything on their team, unless maybe they're like really bulky on their Torn or their Ogerpon. But I'm like, okay, I don't really need more than one special defense boost. So I think I just go for Hyper Voice and switch to Incineroar, get another round of an Intimidate into the Ogerpon, and be able to still have Fake Out available for next turn in case a bigger offensive threat ends up coming out here. So they retreat their Ogerpon Heartflame, and then they're going to reveal that it's actually going to be the Iron Crown. I'm like, why is the Iron Crown back? Did they not bring the Entity? Because I'm like, if they didn't bring the Entity, then how are they hitting the Incineroar? So like, I have a few questions in my head about this, as I do switch out my Rillaboom now and to go out into my Incineroar for, again, what was going to be an intimidating Ogerpon. I don't want to take too much damage from Bleakwind Storm, and I have Fake Out Pressure this upcoming turn. So go for that as they go for Taunt with Torn. So they have Taunt with Tornadus, which is interesting because they have Taunt and Protect. So no Rain Dance on this team, looks like, as I do get a Hyper Voice off for some pretty decent damage across the board. And I'm like, okay, I'm not in a great spot. And again, I keep thinking that I'm Terra Poison with my Primarina. Again, just not me on point today, but I'm like, okay, are they actually Entity back? Because for some reason, I'm like, at this point, I was always surprised to see the Iron Crown here with like the Torn, and I'm like, okay, there is a world that they go for Expanding Force and swap Torn out into Entity, and I'm like, okay, I think my best play here is to probably either attack or to potentially switch out to Rillaboom and go for Flare Blitz. The reason I decided to go for this is like, okay, if it is actually the Entity back, I want to make sure that I can threaten the Iron Crown with the Flare Blitz. And guess what? It is Entity back. So I'm already like, okay, are you actually Terra Water, Terra Blast? And the good thing about Rillaboom here is not only do I get to already have the terrain change, but I also have access to a Grassy Glide that's available to be able to pressure the Iron Crown. So it's not like terrible for me. So I bring out the Rillaboom with the Grassy Surge, and we reset the Psychic Terrain. There is going to be a Terra, and I'm like, okay, we forced the Iron Crown to Terra. It's not too bad. Is it Terra Dry or Terra Water? It reveals the Terra Water, and I'm like, oh, then maybe they are Terra Blasts here. And like, that could be actually kind of annoying if that's the case. And guess what? They do reveal the Terra Water Terra Blast. I'm like, okay, they changed the team a bit, so I don't have to worry about Calm Mind Crown, but Incineroar barely lives on 3, but it's only going to KO itself due to its own Flare Blitz recoil, so Iron Crown is able to take the Flare Blitz. But here I'm like, okay, that was weird, but at least I kind of have a plan here coming up for it. And I'm like, okay, I'm in a bit of a tricky position here. And I'm like, okay, I could go Prim at least, and I could probably threaten the Grassy Glide into Crown, because I could probably be like, okay, maybe force the Crown to Protect. And yeah, then I'm like, maybe not in a doom spot. Again, I'm still thinking that I'm Terra Poison with my Primarina. And then I think like one of these turns, I actually realized, wait, I'm Terra Dragon. So like, I'm not as worried about the Crown as I thought. So they switch out to Entity here. And I was like, okay, they should go Ogerpon Heartflame, but they actually go Torn. And I'm like, okay, Torn comes in, which is fine. As they do reveal Protect on the Crown, I'm like, wait, this is actually pretty all right for me, as I do go for a Fake Out into the Crown. And here I'm like, okay, get a Calm Mind up with the Prim. And I'm like, okay, this isn't, I guess, terrible, because right now I should be able to threaten Grassy Glide plus an attack here potentially, because they can't exactly switch. They don't have redirection on the field. So if they don't switch an Entity, the Crown is vulnerable to the Grassy Glide still. It might not be priority, but the Expanding Force is not going to kill Rillaboom. So I go for a Hyper Voice here, also to cover for a potential like the Ogerpon Heartflame coming in, but they actually switch out the Crown into Entity, and I'm like, okay, this is kind of interesting, as they do bring out the Entity here to reset the terrain. I'm like, all right, it's a bit awkward, but I still think it's manageable, as they go for Bleak Wind Storm and they crit my Rillaboom, and I'm like, I was like, wow, okay. So I'm like, okay, I might be in trouble here, because not having Rillaboom is pretty bad. Hyper Voice does even knock out the Torn. I think I low rolled here, but here I'm like, okay, I think I have a chance. Despite all this, Misty Terrain Flutter Mane could actually come in clutch, but I do have to get a few turns correct here. So get the booster energy, gonna be the speed booster on the Flutter Mane, and I'm like, okay, they're not in a position where they can really switch out, because the Hyper Voice is threatening so much damage, right? And I'm like, okay, they're probably going to just Tailwind and just try to sack these Pokemon to get free switches on their Tailwind, right? So they could just Brute Force. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to Calm Mind, and I'm going to go for a Moonblast and the Entity. The reason is Moonblast should knock out the Entity. I get the chip damage in the Entity, and I get another Calm Mind up with my Primarina, so I can take on the Iron Crown, because I realize that I'm Terra Dragon, but, you know, it's still Iron Crown with Expanding Force and Psychic Terrain, so I'm going to need as many boosts as I can get. Especially since I still have to worry about Ogerpon Heartflame doing a decent amount of damage, because, again, Primarina, even though it's invested, it's not like the craziest physically defensive Pokemon out there. So they went for a Psychic into my Flutter Mane, as Primarina got Calm Mind, and now I'm like, okay, I want to stall out the terrain turn, so I'm actually going to go for another Calm Mind here, and I'm going to go for Protect. The reason is because they can't really do much damage to my Primarina currently, and they can't really risk switching into Hyper Voice, right? Because if I go for Hyper Voice and they switch in like Ogerpon or Iron Crown, they take so much damage that they could just like lose there on the spot. So I'm like, okay, stall out these Tailwind turns as they go for a Psychic and a Flutter Mane, which is beautiful, as I am going to be able to get a Calm Mind up with my Primarina once again. And I kind of want to try to preserve Flutter Mane here, because I'm like, okay, I like the idea of having Misty Terrain up, so I can make sure that I can always deny the Iron Crown Expanding Force from doing crazy amounts of damage to my Primarina, even through the boost at this point. So I'm like, okay, now I'm going to go for, I was debating about, do I go for Misty Terrain or do I go for Moonblast here? And I was like, I'm pretty sure that I go for Moonblast first here, because I was like, okay, what am I clicking against Ogerpon Heartflame and Iron Crown? Because Moonblast isn't going to KO the Crown. Icy Wind doesn't do anything, because like it doesn't make my Primarina faster or anything. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go for a Moonblast, and I'm just going to go for Hyper Voice. They don't have any switch here, and I should be good. So they go for Follow Me, and I'm like, perfect. So I get really good position here, as I am able to get a Moonblast off into the Entity to take the knockout. So Entity goes down. I could have maybe went for the Torn, but Follow Me, so it didn't matter realistically, as they went for Bleak Wind, and they do miss my Flutter Mane. It doesn't really matter. My Flutter Mane would have survived, and they get a speed drop on Primarina. It doesn't really matter, because Primarina's not outspeeding anything, even after Icy Wind. So I do take a double knockout here, and I'm like, okay, maybe I am actually in this game, because they only have one more turn of Tailwind. I wasn't sure if it was 1 or 2 turns of Psychic Terrain. That's why I'm like, okay, I double Protect here to stall out the turn of Tailwind, and then because it's not Calm Mind Iron Crown, because we saw the Terra Blast, I don't have to worry about them getting a Calm Mind up, and then I could go for Misty Terrain afterward, because my Flutter Mane will outspeed these Pokemon, because of the fact that I do have the booster speed and the Tailwind will be expired. So then I could go for a Misty Terrain plus a Hyper Voice, and then I should be in a really good spot to be able to clean up this game. So I do go for a double Protect here, again just stalling out the last turn of Tailwind, and I'll be in a pretty good spot with my Flutter Mane to outspeed these Pokemon, and then do whatever I really want. It also just means that Iron Crown can't like crit Expanding Force in the Primarina, so yeah, one less win con that they have access available to them. So they go for Expanding Force that I block, and Ivy Cudgel does come out into my Primarina, and I'm like, okay, should be out of the woods. should be out of the woods. Primarina also gets a bit of extra leftovers recovery, and it's still pretty healthy. So at this point, I'm like, I should be able to tank the attacks just fine. Don't double crit me or something with Tachyon Cutter as the terrain disappears. I'm like, oh, I guess like the terrain expired. So now I can just go for Moonblast Hyper Voice, because that means that I should be able to KO the crown. And even if they protect, it's like, okay, how much does Ogerpon actually do to my Primarina? Because I am Terra Dragon. Moonblast is going to come out into the protect on the Iron Crown. I wasn't sure if Hyper Voice plus Moonblast was KOing the Ogerpon, but they actually target my Flutter Mane instead. I'm like, okay, they target my Flutter Mane, which is cool because my Primarina is still in a really good spot in this endgame. So I do go for a Hyper Voice here to try and guarantee the 2-shot into the Ogerpon, and Hyper Voice comes out, does a good amount of damage to the Ogerpon. Moonblast wasn't going to do enough to the Ogerpon here, and I'm like, okay, so I can protect to get lefties. Is that obvious? Because they could also Spiky Shield in the Hyper Voice, so I'm just going to go for Hyper Voice because I think the protect to get lefties is obvious. I don't think the protect really does anything here, and if I get the Hyper Voice KO into Ogerpon, I remove like Ivy Cudgel crit chance, which is nice because I think it's less likely that they protect the Ogerpon, because I could protect, like if I protect to get lefties, they Spiky Shield, then I just get a guaranteed Hyper Voice off an Ogerpon. So I just go straight for the Hyper Voice. I KO the Ogerpon, and at this point, the Tachyon Cutter plus Ivy Cudgels, no crits happen, and I'm like, okay, I am pretty much safe here. Just have to dodge one more crit. And I think I go for protect here just to get a bit of extra leftovers recovery, because I'm like, maybe I survive Tachyon Cutter crit into a regular hit. So as long as they don't double Tachyon Cutter crit me, I think like I live. So I just go for protect to try and get the leftovers, but the battle's gonna be forfeit. So yeah, should have checked my Primarina or like looked back at the Primarina earlier, because yeah, I kept thinking it was Terra Poison. Even when I saw the Terra Dragon Crown, it was like for quite a few moments, I'm like, wait, I kept thinking it was Terra Poison. So yeah, it's on me, but as I said before, I recorded this while I'm sick. All right, we have Roy Moon, Golden Go, Amoonguss, Galarian Weezing, Urshifu, and Landorus Incarnate. We've actually played this team before in one of the previous ladder tournaments, so I'm pretty used to what we are seeing. It was like Choice Specs Golden Go, similar to the Toronto team, with Amoonguss, Terra Fire, Mystic Water Urshifu, Life Orb Landorus Incarnate, and the Terra Poison Breaking Swipe Roy Moon. And I feel like matchup-wise, it should be pretty reasonable for my team. I do have a Landorus Incarnate to always threaten Golden Go, as well as the Galarian Weezing. Primarina is a really good mon here. Incineroar, of course, is just really nice in general. And I have pretty good options to pick from, because Ogerpon's able to threaten the Amoonguss as the Golden Go. And I also do have the Incineroar, of course, with the Intimidate. Rillaboom could obviously set up the grassy terrain and switch into the earth powers more comfortably, but I think Rillaboom's the weakest link here, because other than threatening the Urshifu, it really doesn't do much for my team. And I guess the Landorus, but it's not like I have really bad Landorus answers. I decided to go with Flutter Mane plus Incineroar lead here, because I'm kind of expecting maybe like some kind of Landorus mode as to kick things off, and I want to make sure I scare it off. I lead with Incineroar to be able to intimidate and threaten fake out pressure, and then I decide Primarina is just too good not to bring in this matchup. It's good against Urshifu, especially Terra Fire Urshifu, and with Calm Minds is pretty solid, as well as Moonblast into the Roy Moon if Flutter Mane goes down early. So I decide to go with this combination and then bring Landorus Incarnate just to make sure I have an answer to Galarian Weezing, because if neutralizing gas is up, that means my Hyper Voices are normal type and not water type moves, because Liquid Voice is shut off. So I need Landorus Incarnate to make sure that I can actually break through the Weezing stuff. So lead Incineroar and Flutter Mane versus double Fairy Weak on my opponent's side with Urshifu plus the Roy Moon, and I do reveal that I am the faster Flutter Mane than the Roy Moon. So I'm like, okay, I'm in a pretty decent spot, and I'm like, okay, I feel like there's not really a reason for my opponent not to go for a double protect here. So I'm like, okay, I feel like Incineroar should probably be able to switch out, go out into the Primarina. I also wasn't like guaranteed sure if it was Terra Fire. I'm pretty sure like we revealed Terra Fire in one of the games that I played against my opponent, but just to be sure, I wanted to scout for a potential Terra and be fine with it. So they do decide to protect the Roy Moon and protect the Urshifu, double protect on the fake out plus an attack, so they didn't have to go for the Terra immediately. And I'm like, okay, now I have a pretty decent pin position. I can go for Moonblast plus Hyper Voice if I want to cover for the Urshifu, if I really want to. So I'm like trying to figure out like, okay, what is my best option here? Because I think just Moonblasting the Urshifu, because if Urshifu doesn't, it takes a bunch of damage, or I could Moonblast a Roy Moon potentially to knock it out. So I'm trying to figure out what the best play is here, and I'm like, Calm Mind is also pretty nice here because just being able to like take the Lander's attack, take the Golden Go attack, I think is nice. So they decide to switch out the Roaring Moon. And it's like, okay, maybe Golden Go here. And it's like, yeah, Golden Go comes out. I'm like, okay, that's completely fine. And they do decide to go for Terra. And I'm like, okay, because they made that option, right? I'm like, okay, I have a Landorus Incarnate in the back. Even if they knock out my Flutter Mane here, I get the Calm Mind boost with my Primarina, and then my Landorus is just in, and I'm Timid Landorus, so I probably just outspeed the Urshifu and the Golden Go guaranteed, and then just be able to threaten Earth Power, Sandseer, like whatever I really want to threaten. And at this point, it's like, okay, there's probably no Galarian Weezing back, so I'm like, okay, I should be completely fine at this point. As they go for Surging Strikes with the Terra Fire, they absorb the Moonblast, and KO my Flutter Mane. I'm like, yeah, that's still a really good trade for me, like at this point, because now I gotta Calm Mind it up with Primarina, and all I really needed was one Calm Mind, because now I am pretty much in an amazing offensive position. So even though I'm down on Pokemon at this point, because of the fact that now Landers just comes in and it's like, okay, what are they doing to Landers? They're going to be in a really weird spot. So I go into Landers here. I'm like, do I want to go for Terra? And I'm like, Terra Steel isn't that great here. I don't really want to commit to Terra on the attack, and I don't really want to risk Sandseer since I don't think it's a necessary risk that I have to make here. I'm like, okay, I think I can just Earth Power to Golden Go and Hyper Voice, because if they attack with Urshifu, I get a Hyper Voice KO. I know that their Choice Specs Golden Go on this team, so I always get the Earth Power into the Golden Go slot. If they switch Protect, that's completely fine. So yeah, now I just get an Earth Power off into Golden Go as Urshifu detected. So Golden Go goes down. I'm like, perfect. I get rid of the Golden Go. That is a Pokemon that was a bit risky for Primarina, just because even though like I have the +1 special defense boost, I'm a bit worried about making rank crits. So that is one thing I do have removed here. And it's like, okay, now they go on to Roaring Moon. And I'm like, okay, this is completely fine, because if they want to go for a KO on the Landers, they have to Tailwind the Roaring Moon and they have to Surging Strike. So that means both Pokemon are vulnerable here. I'm like, do I want to switch out my Landers? Do I think Landers is more valuable, or do I think Incineroar is more valuable? And at this point, I'm like, Landers doesn't really do much in the back, because I'm assuming it's their own Landers at this point. If it's a Moongus, Incineroar is definitely the most valuable. So I'm like, Landers, don't really need you. I don't really need my Terra Steel either. I don't really have to commit it. So just go for the Earth Power here as they go for a Tail and Surging Strikes. Go for the Landers, and Landers is going to go down. But at this point, I'm like, okay, Landers goes down, but the Roaring Moon is not exactly in the greatest position anyway, as I am going to be able to get a Hyper Voice KO into the Terra Water Urshifu, and I get some decent damage into the Roaring Moon with that Hyper Voice. It was a crit with the Hyper Voice, but it doesn't really matter, because all I really need is like one Moonblast, and the Roaring Moon will be off to the stars. So go out into Incineroar here as my last, and we reveal the Landers. I'm like, okay, as long as I don't get crit by like a Sludge Bomb or Earth Power on the Prim, I should pretty much have the game sealed up, because my opponent can't Terra anymore. I still have Terrestrialization if needed. I can just go for Fake Out and take a KO here. So I Fake Out the Landers because it's the mon that does the most damage. The question is, do I Hyper Voice or do I Moonblast here? I'm like, Landers pretty much is needed for them. I'm going to go for Moonblast into the Roaring Moon, because it's either a dead turn, which means I get to target the Pokemon guaranteed the next turn, or that they go for a really aggressive play like this knockoff plus protect play. I'm like, okay, cool. I get rid of the Roaring Moon, and now I should be in a very, very safe spot, because the Landers is protected. They're not going to go for protect. They are Sandseer. They can't sub, and even if they had sub, like I do have a Hyper Voice, so it doesn't even matter at this point. So I just need to avoid them going for Earth Power in the Primarina, as well as crit, and Primarina might even survive that with the Terra Dragon. So I just go for Hyper Voice with the Terra Dragon and the Flare Blitz, as they do forfeit the game. They couldn't really win at this point. I'm kind of surprised they didn't go for a Sludge Bomb though. Like if they went for Sludge Bomb, Poison, Hope I was Grass Terra Primarina, but I'm kind of surprised they didn't go for that win con. But yeah, with the Terra Dragon, it just pretty much denied that, so was able to take the victory there. All right, we have a crazy team for this next one. Porygon 2, Suicune, Raikou with Pelipper, Amoonguss, and Ursaluna. I'm like looking at this team, I'm like, what the heck am I looking at, man? It's like... So we got Porygon 2, Ursaluna, Amoonguss. That makes sense. Then we see a Pelipper, which is like, okay, there's a Pelipper on this team. And then we see the double Johto trio is like, okay, we don't really see those too often. I'm like, okay, what am I doing here? And I'm like, this is actually a pretty good matchup for Misty Terrain Flutter Mane, because I can prevent the Spore from Amoonguss, as well as Ursaluna would not be able to get burned by the Flame Orb. So I'm like, okay, bring Primarina, set it up, seems pretty good against this team, and set up the Misty Terrain, and then Incineroar Rillaboom back. The only thing that's a little bit awkward about this is the Suicune is actually kind of annoying, and Raikou can be annoying. If they have moves like Snarl and Eerie Impulse, this could actually get like a little bit tricky because I probably get some dead turns out of it, but we'll see. As they lead the Suicune and the Porygon, I'm like, okay, weird lead. They do get attack boost, which is nice for me because obviously a special attack boost would probably be more threatening here to my Mons. So yeah, now I'm just going to be able to go for Misty Terrain Calm Mind because I'm like, okay, I don't want any hard switching to the bear. I don't want any bringing in a Moongus and then threatening the Spore next turn. I'm just going to go for Calm Mind and set up that Misty Terrain because I might as well. So I'm like, okay, if you go for Snarls, I'm going to at least get some special defense boost. So I basically am going to wall these Pokemon. Then I could bring out my Rillaboom at some point and threaten the Wood Hammer. And I'm like, okay, this is a very passive lead for my opponent. And I feel like that this is pretty decent for me because now I get to set up. I go for the Misty Terrain again to cover for the Amoonguss as well as the Ursaluna coming in. And I also prevent like Ice Beam Freeze if they go for it. But then they reveal Calm Mind Suicune. I'm like, it's Calm Mind Suicune? that's not something I expected. As Primarina is able to Calm Mind up itself. So right now the water types are in meditation right here as I'm like, okay, this is a bit strange as they get Trick Room up. I'm like, okay, I don't know what to really expect here, but at least they can't go hard into Ursaluna and like Amoonguss, like it's still a Mon that could exist. So I'm trying to figure out like, okay. I was debating about going like hard Rillaboom now because I could always threaten the Wood Hammer into the Suicune, but I'm like, if they go Amoonguss and I like threaten my spores from it, like it could be a bit weird. So I'm gonna protect here, and it's like I don't know how I'm playing around the Suicune right now because the Suicune's just in a weird spot. I'm probably gonna have to get like at some point figure out a way to deal with the Suicune. At least it's not pressure stall. That would have been worse. As they went for Ice Beam into my Flutter Mane Protect, I go for a Calm Mind to get another boost, and I like assume at this point, okay, we're playing a Calm Mind war right now. We'll just see how like we position our mods. They go for Hydro Pump. They reveal Hydro Pump. I'm like, Hydro Pump? Because I was like, wait, did Suicune lose Scald? I don't think it did. I'm like, Hydro Pump with Pelipper. Interesting. And I'm like, okay, if that's the case, I'm going to keep boosting up with my Prim. There's no reason not to. I'll get a bit of damage on Porygon too. Maybe then I'll two-shot it with the +3 Primarina. And they decide to go Pelipper. And I'm like, ooh, +1 Hydro Pump and Rain. I'm like, Suicune's not the best offensive. I've used Spec Suicune back in my days in 2015. And I'm pretty sure the Hydro Pump's not came in Flutter Mane because Flutter Mane has insane special defense and this one has a decent amount of HP. So I'm like, I don't think this KOs me in Rain. And I was like, yeah, I'm like, really, it was not close. I do get a Moonblast off in the Pelipper, which breaks a potential Sash. And I'm like, okay, I'm in a pretty good spot now. There is not much to complain about. I'm just going to go for a Protect and just draw off a Hyper Voice because right now I don't see a reason not to. I could go Rillaboom, but as I said before, I don't really want to give up terrain control if necessary. So I go for the Hyper Voice here. No Protects. I just get the KO on the Pelipper and I get some decent damage on the Suicune. And I'm like, okay, what's the Suicune going for? Is it going for Calm Mind here? It goes for Air Slash. I'm like, okay, so we saw Calm Mind, Hydro Pump, and Air Slash. And I'm like, okay, I feel like I probably beat the Suicune with Primarina at this point. And we also reveal it's a leftover. So I'm like, is it Rest as the last move? Because I'm just trying to figure out what the last move is. As the Ursaluna comes in, I'm like, okay, this is pretty fine. I just go out into Incineroar here, get that Intimidate off into the Ursaluna, and I just go for a Hyper Voice here. Because there's really nothing stopping me from just going for this Hyper Voice in the rain. My opponent does have Terrestrialization available, but this is still a Hyper Voice in rain. I just feel that it's going to do a lot of damage. Even if they Terrestrialize the Ursaluna, could maybe even pick up the knockout because they would take the special defense drop most likely from the Headlong Rush. So I do go for the Incineroar pivot. And I'm like, okay, I'm fine with risky Incineroar if it's necessary. They go for the Headlong Rush with the Ursaluna. Does a pretty good damage to Primarina. I'm really glad I switched in Incineroar on that Intimidate because, yeah, that did still a little bit more than I expected. But Hyper Voice is going to KO the Ursaluna, take the knockout. I get some good damage on the Suicune, and I'm like, okay. Okay. As we're going to see Air Slash into the Flutter Mane slot. They want to save Hydro Pump power points, which makes sense as well. And I'm like, yeah, I feel like I'm in a pretty good spot. I can't really see anything about it. We're going to see the terrain disappear as well as the Trick Room expires. I'm like, all right. The thing is, I'm like, okay, do I need to Terra anything on my side? I'm like, Primarina doesn't have to Terra. I don't have to Terra my Rillaboom into fire in this matchup. And Flutter Mane, Terra doesn't really matter here. So I'm like, okay, I think my best play is just to go for the Terra Ghost play and just go for a Hyper Voice, because I'm like, okay, prevent the Suicune from being able to rest, and then I'll just break through it afterward. As Battle gonna be forfeited, and yeah, they couldn't really break through the Primarina at this point. Definitely an interesting team. I don't know what to say too much about it, but Primarina was just able to like set up a Calm Minds, and then they just had no pressure against it, especially with no Guts Ursaluna available to them because of Misty Terrain. And we get a rematch immediately, which is kind of surprising because I actually think I did wait a minute to find the game. So yeah, I feel like there wasn't really much that was like, okay, that would change anything. I'm just going to lead Rillaboom Primarina this time because I'm like, maybe they adjust here. Maybe they bring the Raikou instead. I think back Misty Terrain is also still like pretty valuable, and like just having an immediate way to pressure the Suicune. Also, like they can't really like safely switch into Bear on like Woodhammer and Hyper Voice. So yeah, I felt like that this was like generally fine. I didn't think they would want to like lead Amoonguss either because of the fact that like they just saw that I had Misty Terrain on my Flutter Mane, so I don't think that's really an option I have to worry about, as they lead Suicune plus Raikou. And I'm like, okay, Rillaboom was a really good lead adjustment here for me. And I'm like, okay, what does this Raikou have? Because I am a little bit worried about like, okay, do you have Thunder potentially? Like, is this some Specs Raikou something? And I'm like, I feel like my best play here, I was like debating about like, okay, what Terras do I really need? I don't really need my Terra too much. Dragon Terra is completely fine in this matchup. I guess the only thing that's like Porygon 2 Ice Beam, but otherwise not really that big of a concern if I'm already set up with like a couple. So I'm just gonna like, okay, I'm gonna go for a Terra Dragon, go for Calm Mind, and I'm gonna Woodhammer the Suicune. Because like if I force the Suicune to Terrestrialization, that means they can't Terra the Porygon, that means they can't Terra the Ursaluna. So I should be in a fine spot, right? So I go for the Terra Dragon. I still resist most of the moves, and we saw that the Suicune had Air Slash. It reveals Protect here, which I'm kind of surprised by. So I'm like, what is the Suicune set? Because it's Hydro Pump, Air Slash, Calm Mind, and Protect. And no lefties either. So it like pretty much is always going to be on a timer. It can't recover, which means Primarina always beats it. So I'm like, okay, unless I get like Air Slash into Oblivion there, but yeah. I do go for the Calm Mind here as they go for Eerie Impulse, so smart from them. It doesn't really work out for me because like, okay, I could go for another Calm Mind, but they could go for another Eerie Impulse. I could be +2 special defense, -2 special attack. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm gonna have to retreat here, and I decide to go Incineroar here because at this point I don't want to go my Flutter Mane just yet, and I would like to be able to pivot around if necessary. So I decide, hey, gonna switch on my Primarina, go out into Incineroar, should be completely fine. As I also still have like Taunt Pressure, Parting Shot the next turn. So yeah, I just decided to go out into my Incineroar. I'm like, okay, is the Suicune going to retreat here? Because this Incineroar also covers like Rillaboom coming in. But they decide no Terra, so they just go for an Eerie Impulse again into what was my Primarina slot. As I do get a Woodhammer into the Raikou, and I bring it down to a Focus Sash. I'm like, okay, it's Focus Sash Raikou. Interesting. So I do take some recoil as I go for an Air Slash into the Rillaboom, but I am specially defensive Rillaboom, so doesn't really do like any damage here. And I'm like, okay, I have a very nice spot here because now I can go for a Woodhammer into the Suicune, and I can Parting Shot off into the Raikou. The reason I like this play is because I always try to Grassy Glide into the Raikou anyway, and again, I would like to see a Force Terra from the Suicune. They don't Terra, they go for Aura Spear with the Raikou. Actually does a lot to my Incineroar. I was kind of shocked about how much damage that did. I do KO the Suicune with the Woodhammer. I'm like, okay, I don't have to worry about the Suicune ever, I guess. So that's like one mon I don't have to worry about. I do take a lot of recoil from the Woodhammer, as we're going to see the Parting Shot go off into the Raikou, lower its special attack, and now I get to bring in my Primarina once again, and now Primarina is in a pretty good offensive position, right? I get to save my Intimidate as well, or I could go Flutter Mane here, and I'm like, I think Flutter Mane might be better here. So I decided to go Flutter Mane. And the reason I decided to go Flutter Mane is because now I actually have a position where I think I could go for multiple things if I want to. I could go for a Moonblast in the Raikou, Woodhammer the other slot. I could go for Grassy Glide plus Misty Terrain. And I'm really liking the idea of Grassy Glide plus Misty Terrain because I'll get the priority KO the Raikou, and then Misty Terrain pretty much would prevent anything from like the Porygon or from the Ursaluna as well as the Amoonguss. But then we see Pelipper come in, and I'm like, wait, Pelipper came in. I'm like, okay. If it's Pelipper, I don't have to set up the Misty Terrain. I'm just going to go straight for the KO on Pelipper if I can. I go for Grassy Glide plus Moonblast because I'm like, if I get the KO, I'm in a great spot. Pelipper goes down, and I'm like, okay, the Raikou can't do anything. It's -1 special attack. I'm like, okay, I'll take that. As they go for Electro Weapon, I'm like, okay, whatever your last Pokemon is, I'm pretty sure I'm in a pretty good spot because I just Grassy Glide the Raikou because we reveal his moveset now. We saw Electro Web, we saw Eerie Impulse, we saw Aura Spear, and I don't know if we actually saw the last move. I can't remember if we saw Protect or not, but the bear comes in, I'm like, I'm just going to Grassy Glide, and I'm just going to go for Misty Terrain. As long as I prevent the Ursaluna from getting the Flame Orb, I'm pretty sure just always win the game regardless. So Raikou goes down to the Grassy Glide. I do get the Misty Terrain set with Flutter Mane, so the Ursaluna can't get burned. And now, because the Ursaluna can't get burned, it's just doing a lot less damage, and then Primarina should be able to win in the end game. As they reveal Play Rough, and they go for Play Rough KO my Rillaboom, I'm like, okay, that's interesting bear. Like, are you a Sulfast? There's like, do you even have Flame Orb? Like, I'll never find out because it's in the terrain. But Primarina gets to come in, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go for Icy Wind plus Hyper Voice at this point. It covers for, like, they still have Terastization that they never use, and Headlong Rush doesn't matter because Headlong Rush crit doesn't look like it knocks out the Primarina based on the damage from the game 1. So no Terra, Icy Wind, Hyper Voice, double up, KOs the Ursaluna, and I am able to take the game once again. So definitely an interesting one for sure, but I feel like Rillaboom was just a really strong just lead adjustment here. Just being able to go for like the Wood Hammers, not really have to fear too much, and yeah, it was like really hard for my opponent to stop the Rillaboom, especially when I doubled up the Pelipper and prevented Hurricane from doing the most damage, because that was a really big thing was Ursaluna Pelipper. They weren't able to damage my Rillaboom. Rillaboom was able to get a lot of damage to them. Alright, we get another rematch against the Roaring Moon player, and I'm like, okay, is there any adjustment that I really want to do here? I feel like Flutter Mane could be in the back this time because it's like, if I let Flutter Mane, I don't think that Landorus Incarnate leads here because Landorus Incarnate would have been like that great of a lead against a Flutter Mane and Incineroar combination anyway. So I'm like, they might decide to lead Golden Go this time. And I'm like, okay, Primarina and Incineroar seems pretty good. And then I'm still going to bring the same 4. I don't think Rillaboom's that great in this matchup. It only really helps out against the Urshifu and kind of the Landorus, but at the same time not. Ogerpon Heartflame could be good, but I think Landorus Incarnate to always again pressure the Terrifier Urshifu, pressure the Golden Go, as well as the Galarian Weezing, I think is a big one, and then have Flutter Mane because I need Flutter Mane to be able to threaten the Landorus Incarnate if my Primarina gets low. So I felt like those 4 are fine, and I felt like Primarina Instant was like a pretty reasonable lead because if they lead something like Roaring Moon Golden Go, I could just go for like Protect plus like Flare Blitz. They decide to lead an interesting lead, which is a Moongus plus the Urshifu. And I'm like, if I let Flutter Mane plus like Primarina, I could just like Misty Terrain right here and be in a phenomenal position, right? Even a Moongus would have been a great lead because I could have just faked out and threatened a Moonblast or Calm Mind here. But here I'm like, okay, this is still pretty fine. Like, I can afford to go for Terra Ghost. I just need to make sure that Primarina is in a position to be able to win. So I'm going to go for a Terra Ghost taunt because I live Surging Strikes. And I'm like, they might also just go for potential Protect if they do have it because of the fact that if I fake out one and I go for Moonblast, like if I fake out a Moongus and I go for Moonblast, they are in a bad position. But they decide no Rage Powder at all. They just decide, hey, I'm going to go for Surging Strikes plus Spore, it looks like here. And I'm like, okay. At least I'm going to prevent the Amoonguss from going for the Spore because I'm assuming that they're not going to expect the taunt from the instant because I don't think I revealed it in the last game. So I do go for the taunt into the Amoonguss, and I do go for the Calm Mind immediately with the Primarina, and I'm able to get +1 special defense and +1 special attack. Both important because this is Sludge Bomb Amoonguss, and they do go for the Spore attempt into the Primarina. So now I'm like, okay, now I just get a free Moonblast and I go for a Parting Shot. If they decide to protect the Urshifu, then the Parting Shot goes off into whatever switches in for the Amoonguss, or if Amoonguss stays in to draw off a Sludge Bomb, not really doing that much damage, and I get to reposition into something that's like way more offensive, like my own Flutter Mane, for example. So here I'm like, okay, that's completely fine. If they switch out the Amoonguss to bring out like Roaring Moon or like something else, that's completely fine as well. And if they decide, hey, I'm going to Terra Fire my Urshifu, and go for like Surging Strikes into the Incineroar, I have a Landorus Incarnate that just comes in and clicks Earth Power, right? So, and I also still threaten the Hyper Voice. So regardless, like all of those options are good for me still. So they switch out the Amoonguss here and preserve it. So they decide to go out into the Roaring Moon. And I'm like, okay, I still am in a really good trade regardless of like no matter what they do here, as they are able to get the booster energy and get the speed booster, but not really that big of a deal. So they do go for the Terrifier immediately. I'm like, okay, still have Primarina in a pretty good spot, and I'm like probably expecting that they KO the Incineroar here. So I'm like, okay, if they KO the Incineroar, should be able to get Flutter Mane, go for Misty Terrain plus Hyper Voice in a really good spot. As they go for Surging Strikes, but they target my Primarina. I'm like, okay, they went for my Primarina, which is really interesting here. So they do need to damage into Primarina, so I'm assuming that they're trying to go for maybe like Landorus Sludge Bomb endgame, which I think is fair here. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm able to get Parting Shot off into the Roaring Moon. The Roaring Moon's not able to do much here. And I can throw off this Moonblast into the Urshifu. And I'm like, okay, what am I bringing out here? And I'm like, pretty sure that I'm either going Flutter Mane or Landorus here. And I like am debating it quite heavily because I'm like, okay, if Landorus comes in, I have to probably sack something to the Surging Strikes here and then click Hyper Voice. And do I really want to do that this turn? Or do I go Flutter Mane and use my speed booster if necessary? But I decide I think I'd rather go the Landorus route because I think having the ability to go for the Misty Terrain later in the game I think is more valuable, because I think this turn, like, Incineroar's main job really was to handle the Golden as well as the Amoonguss. I don't know if Golden in the back, but I'm still thinking that this is fine anyway. The turn I decide to Terra Ghost the Incineroar, it was pretty much like, okay, this mon becomes a lot less useful against the Golden anyway. I already have a special defense boost with my Primarina, so it shouldn't be too bad to deal with the Golden. I can just sack my Incineroar here to go for the Hyper Voice, and I'm in an okay position here. Because, like, if they want to deal with the Landorus, they have to Tailwind and Surging Strikes here, or they go for Detect, which is also fine for me as well. So they go for that, and they go for Protect Tailwind. I'm like, okay, I don't mind this position because now I actually threaten the Fake Out plus the Hyper Voice instead. And I'm like, okay, is Urshifu going to allow me to do that? Are they going to switch out, or are they going to go for Surging Strikes? I don't think the Surging Strikes has too much value because, like, KOing Incineroar here, I don't think is that valuable to them. They have, like, knockoff Roaring Moon, and I don't think that they really need to KO the Incineroar here. Like, trading the Urshifu for the Incineroar doesn't seem like a good trade in my eyes. So I'm like, I think Amoonguss is probably very likely coming in here for the Urshifu. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go for Fake Out into Roaring Moon. And I decide to Calm Mind with Primarina once again. And the reason I decide to Calm Mind with Primarina once again, it takes on the Amoonguss better because of, like, the Sludge Bomb, as I mentioned before, but also the Landorus Incarnate, which I think is also, like, a pretty big deal. So I decide to Fake Out, and I decide to Calm Mind with the Primarina again. And now I still think I'm in a really good position because now that they've taken the spot, I know a line that I can take here because they went Amoonguss. I thought about this, like, position. I'm like, okay, now I should be able to go for, like, a Protect with my Primarina, you know, just deny the knockoff, the Spore, the Sludge Bomb, and they're probably going to KO my Incineroar. I'm like pretty sure they're going to go for knockoff Spore into my Incineroar slot since it's a pretty free knockoff Spore combination. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to protect Primarina, and if they don't knock off my Incineroar, they try to knock off my Primarina to get rid of its leftovers, I get to taunt off into Amoonguss, they can't go for Spore. And if they do go for the knockoff and KO my Incineroar, I'm completely okay with that because I am able to now get in my Flutter Mane, and my Flutter Mane has Misty Terrain. So all I have to do here is just set up that Misty Terrain to make sure that the Primarina can't go asleep. And then I'll be in a pretty good spot. So that is basically the goal of what I'm trying to get for, which is going to be out into Flutter Mane. So I decide to go Flutter Mane, and now Flutter Mane threatens the Roaring Moon. The Roaring Moon can't do much damage to me, but also the fact that the Primarina is also in a good spot. So these Pokemon are in very weird situations right here because I have a +2 Primarina. The Flutter Mane has good defenses. I get to go for Misty Terrain, and I get to go for Hyper Voice. And the reason I decided to go for Hyper Voice here is because I'm covering a switch because these Pokemon in front of me don't do much damage to Primarina, but the Pokemon in the back that could switch in actually are kind of annoying. So I just decide I'm not going to give them any free momentum. So they decide to risk it here, switch out the Amoonguss out into the Urshifu, maybe expecting taunt from the Flutter Mane or something. As they go for a knockoff into Primarina, get rid of my leftovers, but now I'm in a phenomenal position because now I get Misty Terrain set up. Now no spores can happen onto my Primarina for a couple turns, and I also get the Hyper Voice because now I KO the Urshifu. Urshifu just goes down, eliminated, and that means that my Flutter Mane is just a lot safer. Even if Golden goes in the back at this point, because I got 2 Calm Mind boosts with my Primarina, I'm in a good spot. If it's Landorus, Icy Wind Hyper Voice is threatening a lot of damage too. I also still have Moonblast that's threatening the Roaring Moon. So right now, they're in a really rough spot. They're going to go Amoonguss, and I'm assuming they're just going to go for the Sludge Bomb crit, and I'm just going to be like, don't Sludge Bomb crit me, please. So I'm just going to go for a Moonblast plus Calm Mind because I don't think they're going to go for Rage Powder, and the battle's going to be forfeit because they're not going to go for a Sludge Bomb crit chance. I'm like, okay, that works for me. So we are able to take the win, and I felt like I was just able to really position Primarina pretty nicely in that match. Even though the lead and like how they were able to pressure a lot with 30 strikes immediately, how it worked out, I was still able to position Primarina eventually for a really good spot in the mid game. All right, third time's the charm, I guess. Porygon 2, Suicune, the Raikou, Pelipper, Amoonguss, and the Ursaluna. And I'm like, is there really anything different I would really do from the other game? And I'm like, not really. I still think the 4 are like just generally ideal. I don't think there's really any kind of anything that I really have to worry about here. So I am just going to go with this. And yeah, like we are going to get rematches probably because it's probably less likely that people are playing in this tournament specifically because there is also a grand challenge that's going on currently. So yeah, not too surprising that we get a few more rematches than normal, but we do see the Raikou plus the Pelipper coming out versus my Primarina and Rillaboom. And this is actually a really good lead adjustment on my opponent's side because I still have never seen the Pelipper item yet. So I don't know if it's Covert Cloak. We know the Raikou's Focus Sash, so it could be Covert Cloak. It could be like Rocky Helmet. I'm not 100% certain, but I'm like, okay, what is my best play here? And I'm like, pretty sure again, I don't have any great switches here. So I'm like, okay, I think my best play is just to go for the Terra with the Primarina and just draw off a hit here because like I want to break the sash on the Raikou, maybe put in Grassy Glide range with the attack, and if they go for Eerie Impulse, not that big of a deal because Rillaboom is still in a pretty decent offensive position. I decide, hey, just go for Terra Dragon, Hyper Voice, and Woodhammer should KO the Pelipper even after the Eerie Impulse, and I should be in a pretty good spot from there, right? Because I do have a very specially defensive Rillaboom, so I should be able to take a Hurricane unless this Pelipper has some like really big boosting items. So that is my decision here. I decide Terra Dragon, Colors of Thunder. We still didn't see Thunder yet. They decide to protect the Pelipper, and I'm like, okay. I get a pretty decent hit off into the Raikou. They probably go for the Eerie Impulse, but no, it's Electro Up instead. I'm like, okay. They went for Electro Up. Should be fine here. As like the Rillaboom speed is dropped, but at the end of the day, I still am able to heal back with the Grassy Terrain anyway, and I get like a pretty decent huff into the Raikou. So this is a Hyper Voice in range, so I'm like hoping that this is probably like 2 shots to Raikou, but Raikou is actually a bit bulkier than I anticipated, and the Grassy Terrain means that I definitely am not KOing the Raikou here. So I do heal back to full basically with my Pokemon, and now I'm like, okay, I feel like I'll probably live a Pelipper attack again, as I said before, unless it's like some big boosting item. I'm just going to go for Hyper Voice. And I was debating about switching into Flutter here, but I'm like, Misty Terrain's probably a bit more valuable. And I feel like I need the damage pressure into the Pelipper eventually. So I was like, do I go Flutter or do I just Woodhammer? And I decide, hey, I'm just going to Woodhammer the Pelipper because I'm like, okay, if I get rid of Pelipper, I should still be in a good spot against the rest of the Pokemon anyway. They go for Aura Spear, doesn't do much damage to the Rillaboom. And then they go for the Hurricane. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I lived this, but the Rillaboom actually just goes down to the Hurricane. Like, I was like, wow, that wasn't a crit or anything. And then they reveal the Pelipper is Life Orb. So it was Life Orb Pelipper, and I'm like, that actually makes this very awkward because I don't KO the Raikou. I don't have the Grassy Glide available. This is not easy. So I got to go Flutter Mane here. And I'm like, okay, what am I doing here? Because this is not exactly that easy depending on what they have in the back. Because losing Rillaboom was a lot of coverage that I did have. I feel like I have to set up the Calm Minds here. And I'm going to Moonblast the Raikou because I need to get rid of the Eerie Impulse / Electro threat. I don't know if the Pelipper has a Wide Guard or if it has a like Tailwind that I can go for, but I'm willing to go for it as Pelipper actually retreats here. So I'm very happy about this decision because they reveal Porygon 2, and I'm like, okay, I'm actually in a really nice spot now because now the Moonblast is able to threaten the Raikou. It wasn't like Pelipper was getting knocked out with a Life Orb attacking to either of my Pokemon. It would have hurt the Primarina for sure. Would have also hurt the Flutter Mane, but I would have survived the attack. But more importantly, I just don't think the Raikou has Protect. I'm pretty sure that we just never saw Protect throughout. So I do get a Calm Mind up with Primarina, and I'm like, okay. Primarina boosted +1 seems pretty good. It's like, okay, what are you going to bring out next? And it's going to be the Ursaluna. And I'm like, ooh, this should be pretty safe for me because now all I have to do is just get a Misty Terrain up. So I'm like, okay, Hyper Voice here, Misty Terrain. If they go for Protect, does work out. And yeah, they reveal Protect. I'm like, okay, so it's Play Rough, Headlong Rush, and I'm okay with that. I get a Misty Terrain up with my Flutter Mane, and there isn't really much they could do because they can't really get Trick 'em up. They could go for Ice Beam into Primarina, but luckily the good thing about Misty Terrain is it does prevent Ice Beam from freezing my Primarina. So I'm actually in a pretty good spot, and I can still threaten Icy Wind plus Hyper Voice the next turn, but they actually go for Trick Room. And I'm like, my Primarina is probably slower than you because I have the Icy Wind drop. So I'm like, okay, I guess I don't have to Icy Wind this upcoming turn. I could just go for a switch to Instant and go for Hyper Voice instead because, as we saw before, I had the speed drop on Primarina from the Electro Web from earlier. So now all I have to do is get this Intimidate off into the Bear. I mean, just in case, because again, they still have Terrestrialization available. And they actually do outspeed my Primarina, but they went for Facade for some reason. I don't get why they didn't go for Headlong Rush there, but I am just able to blow up the Ursaluna. So Ursaluna goes down. Porygon 2 is like very, very low. And they go for Ice Beam. And I'm like, okay, this works out really well for me. And like, Headlong Rush into Ice Beam would have KO'd thanks to the Intimidate, but like, you know, if one of them crit, it would have been a different story. But I still think I probably won with Flutter Mane. They would have probably still needed like a bunch of crits at the end of the day, so it works out. We do bring out the Pelipper from my opponent end, and yeah, like I have a pretty safe play here. We saw that my Primarina was slower than the Porygon 2, so it's faster in Trick Room. I can now go for a Fake Out in the Pelipper because it's not Covert Cloak, and I can go for a Moonblast. If they are Terra Ghost, it doesn't even really change anything at this point because I still have, again, like multiple Pokemon that are available to me. So yeah, I just go for Fake Out into the Pelipper, and I do go for a Moonblast into the Porygon. I go for a Moonblast over Hyper Voice just in case the Pelipper's like Last Ditch Wide Guard, I suppose. So yeah, I just make sure I ensure to knock on the Porygon 2. And at this point, the game is over because now I have multiple Pokemon that could just target down this Pelipper slot. So I could just go for Moonblast plus Parting Shots. So a bit of a spookier game because my opponent did get me on like the lead, and the Pelipper actually was able to KO my Rillaboom, which gave them a lot of trouble in game 2. But I think the ability to have Misty Terrain, again, just denying what Ursaluna likes to do, get Calm Minds up with Primarina, put on a lot of offensive pressure because they set up the rain for me. So Hyper Voices were doing a lot of damage, especially at +1. Not much to say. Primarina was able to kind of just dish out so much damage. Alright, so we have a Flutter Mane, Dondozo, Tatsugiri, Chiyu, Tinglu, and Glamora. And I'm like, okay, this matchup seems pretty punishing in close team sheet, especially for my team, because it's like, okay, if it's Oblivious Dondozo, Primarina can generally be able to beat the Dondozo pretty reasonably well. But if it is the Unaware set, you have to play quite differently. So here I'm like, which one is it? I'm like, okay, Flutter Mane Chiyu is also a pain. They have a Tinglu here. That could be a bit scary with Glim. Glim is just really difficult because of the fact that, like, sure, I have Landorus, and, like, I am bringing Landorus for sure in this matchup, but I'm like, okay, I have to bring a Landorus lead that doesn't lead to, like, Flutter Mane plus Chiyu, because Flutter Mane Chiyu could just blow up the Landorus immediately. So I go for Primarina plus the Landorus because it covers both if they lead Flutter Mane Chiyu or they lead the Glamora stuff. So here I'm like, okay, this is probably okay as long as they don't lead like Flutter Mane plus the Glamora immediately for like Icy Wind plus Meteor Beam or Sludge Bomb combinations. That was basically the idea of the plan. So we're going to see the Tinglu plus the Glamora, and I'm like, okay, what am I expecting here? Is this like some Rocks plus Mortal Spin combination that I'm supposed to expect here? And I'm like, okay, I want to scout for a potential Terror from the Glamora because I think that's really important. I think it's probably Power Herb potentially because of the fact that if with Chiyu Flutter Mane, you usually see Power Herb because of like getting rid of like Incineroar immediately. So I'm just going to go for double protect. I want to scout a Terra potentially from the Glamora or a Spiky Shield immediately and maybe like a Snarl or Ruination. They reveal Indoor and I'm like, oh no. I'm like, oh no, what is this? As they go for Earthquake, and I'm like, I let the special attackers to make sure that they don't get the Toxic Spikes up, but this is definitely a different way that could get Toxic Spikes up. They go for Indoor plus the Earthquake here, and I'm like, okay, that's really bad. That's really bad. And then another thought is in my head is like, is this some custom berry Glamora? I'm like really hoping not, because I can't really let Primarina get poisoned. It's already a pretty bad spot. I decide here to just Sludge Bomb the Glamora, and I decide to just go for a Calm Mind to try and set up if the Dondozo is oblivious and not unaware. But yeah, it's custom berry Glamora. I see the Mortal Spin, I'm like, yeah, that's probably unaware Dondozo. I'm not liking the looks of this game. I think it's winnable, but it's like really, really unlikely. I don't really want to Terra either my Pokemon because I want to save the Terra for Incineroar with Ghost, so I can actually Terra out a Wave Crash. I do KO the Glamora, and I'm like, okay, it's still really bad, especially because, yeah, like the poisons, everything on my team is poison. Everything on my team is poison. I'm like, is this winnable? I'm like, maybe if I get some crits, depends on the Dozo set, but maybe it's winnable. The Ruination hitting Primarina does not help though. It does a lot of damage to Primarina. I'm like, this might have been over from gate or from turn 2. And I like double protect again to scout for a Terra, but I got punished because the Endure set means that they got custom berry. I would have had to double attack turn 1 and then double protect turn 2 for like my Pokemon not to be paralyzed, so I have a better chance at doing this. So now I'm in a really, really rough position because I'm like, Dondozo's coming in, unless it's Flutter Mane Chi-Yu. If it's Flutter Mane Chi-Yu, maybe Primarina could help, but it is the Dondozo. It's like, yeah, the Tatsu's definitely in the back. So I'm like, okay, what can I do here to have a chance at winning? And I mean a chance. And I'm like, okay, they should go out in a Tatsu. I'm like, do I go on the offense here or do I just hard switch to Instant? And I'm like, I think I go hard into Incineroar here because I think like if they go for like Protects, it's probably better to get the Intimidate now as well as like Fake Out Pressure the following turn. So, or no, I actually, no wait, no, I think I do go Instant. Yeah, I do go Instant. I think I debated about just going for Earth Power and just praying for a crit, but like, I think Instant was like my play here because I was like, I'm not sure if they Wave Crash to Lando immediately, but I feel like Protect makes sense to get the poison, you know, damage into the Primarina. So that was basically my idea here. I do get the Intimidate off into the Dondozo, and it is unaware. The Tinglu protects, which is not surprising to me, and then the Dondozo is going to go for Protect as well. It's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. So I do get at least a free Intimidate off into the Dondozo. I go for a Moonblast. It is going to fail into the Protect. And I'm like, okay, still a really weird spot. I don't know their Covert Cloak unaware. Like, I assume it's leftovers at this point, but it's like, okay, if I Fake Out plus Moonblast doesn't even get me anything, like, I probably am better off going hard in a Rillaboom because one, I could save my Intimidate. But I think one thing that's also pretty annoying, again, since I don't know if it's Covert Cloak or not, is like Primarina is getting really low on HP, and I'm like, maybe I need to get like the Grassy Terrain up so I could counteract the poison damage because the leftovers in Grassy Terrain might allow Primarina to stick around a bit longer. So Taylor switches out, not too surprising, gonna be out into the Tatsugiri, and I'm like, okay, Tatsugiri comes in, Commander, get all your boosts with Dondozo. It is at least only a +1 attack. It is going to be the attack booster Tatsugiri, so it shouldn't have body press on this Dondozo, so I should be pretty okay. I'm expecting basically at this point for it to be the Wave Crash, Order Up, EQ set. I'm like, with Rillaboom, if they went for an EQ. Oh, wait, I went for Fake Out. I went for Fake Out. I thought I went Rillaboom here, but I think I just was like, go for a Moonblast crit here. Okay, no, yeah, I did go for Moonblast crit. Like, here's the thing, Moonblast crit didn't even do much enough, regardless, but I did need some damage. I think maybe I should have went Rillaboom, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like the same thing. I think I just go out in the Rillaboom this turn. I am misremembering this one a bit, but like, yeah, like I feel like at this point, like I'm just gonna need some Mega Crit and Dondozo to help because they have Terastization available. I don't know which Terra they are. Like Fairy and Grass are the most common. I'm kind of expecting Grass here because I'm not sure if their Moongus matchup is incredible, but yeah, I decide, you know what, now is the time to go Rillaboom Protect. This covers a Wave Crash into the Primarina slot. If they order up, I can always switch out. So yeah, I mean, it's still not looking good. Let me just say, it is not looking good. But maybe I could force a Terra and then, you know, be able to hit the Dondozo with a huge Sludge Bomb. And if I chip the Dondozo well enough, maybe it'll work. We saw his leftovers on the Dondozo. But yeah, Grassy Surge gonna come out. But they reveal Substitute. I'm like, oh my god, it is Substitute. Or did I call Mind here? I call Minded because I was hard reading Protect. I call Minded here because I was hard reading Protect. I didn't Protect because I'm like, at this point, like, they might Wave Crash or order up my Incineroar. Like, at this point, I have to play aggressive regardless. Like, there isn't really much I could do here. But the fact that they have Sub is like, okay, it's probably over. Like, it's probably over. Because that is really bad that they have Substitute. Because now I don't even know if I'm going to be able to break the Substitute, especially if they go for Terra. Their Terra Grass Substitute is like over. It's like literally over. So I'm like, is there a way? And I'm like, okay, maybe if Landorus comes in and Mega Crits this if I get rid of the sub. But the only unfortunate part is I am not Terra Poison Landorus on this team. I'm Terra Steel. So I don't have the extra damage power of like the Landorus that I would need here for this. So they go for the Protect, which is like understandable, gets the poison damage on the Rillaboom, and I'm like, there's really not much I could do. I know it's unaware Dondozo, so like Calm Minds are not gonna matter. And I was like debating about this entire time, can I go for timer? But like before, like when the Dozel thing started, it was like 6 minutes on the timer. I'm like, there's no way that I'm getting to 14 minutes. Like overall, like I am up Mons, like I'm up 4-3, but the problem is Primarina is really low. Incineroar can't really switch in. Landers is always threatened by Wave Crash. I'm like, yeah, this is pretty bad. And I'm like, okay, what's the move on Dondozo? Like, what is your moveset? Because that's actually going to be like pretty important here. So, because of the fact that the like, are you just order up Wave Crash? Are you order up EQ? Because if you order up EQ, Primarina probably takes the attack, and at least you can't hit my Lando for much damage. That's basically my fall process. So I'm just trying to get, like, again, Lando in, maybe try to do something, because I know they're going to Terra this turn most likely. We are going to see the Terra, and I'm like, okay, are you Grass or are you going to be Fairy? And it does reveal Fairy, which Fairy makes this a lot easier for me. I mean, it's still a really difficult game, but let me just say if it was Grass, like breaking the sub was like impossible. I'm like hoping that Woodhammer can actually break the Substitute because that's like something I'm going to really need here. As I go for the Woodhammer, and then we reveal the sub is not broken. I'm like, yeah, that's bad. And they have Wave Crash. So they go for Wave Crash and it targets the Prim. And Primarina survives, which is kind of crazy when I think about it. But I'm like, okay. Because that's +1 Wave Crash. It's not +2. I am able to get a Moonblast off. I do break the sub. But I'm like there's not really much I could do still regardless. Like, they can just protect. And I'm like, I just need them to mess up. I just need them to mess up and me get a crit. That's basically it. So the fact that they have Wave Crash means that Lando is actually heavily threatened here. But I'm like, okay, it's probably Wave Crash, Order Up, Substitute, and Protect, right? Like, I'm assuming the last move is Order Up at this point. So here I'm like, all right, do I see a situation where I could get myself out of this spot? Because they're probably going to go for like another round of Protect, stall out, and Substitute. Like, is there anything I could really do here? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go out into my Instant because, you know, having Primarina in case the timer is a thing. And then I'm just going to go for a Woodhammer here into the Dondozo because then I could go for like Fake Out Cycles, bring in the Lando, go for Terra Steel with Lando, and then maybe with like Terra Steel I could survive like the Wave Crashes from the Dondozo. Go for Sludge Bomb twice, and Life Orb Sludge Bomb should do a good amount of damage. That's the idea here. They didn't protect with the Dondozo though. They also revealed a Rillaboom which is faster than Dondozo, which is big, and then they go for a Wave Crash into my Incineroar. I'm like, I take so much damage with the Incineroar. That was not worth it. Because if I stayed him in Prim and sacrificed Prim instead, I got Lando in. I go for Terra Steel Sludge Bomb plus switch out the Rillaboom and Instant, and then I think I'm actually in a pretty reasonable position because I'd get 2 Sludge Bombs off, and I don't think that Dondozo could actually take the knockout. And if they protect, I get Fake Out Sludge Bomb into another Sludge Bomb, right? So I'm like, it also is really punishing here not to have knockoff Incineroar because I couldn't knock off the leftovers on the Dondozo at any point in this game. So here I decide, you know what? I'm hard switching my Rillaboom here because I need Rillaboom to be able to survive this game. And I go out into Landorus because I need the Sludge Bomb pressure. And I also decide to switch out Incineroar into Primarina because I'm like, okay, I'm going to need Fake Out Sludge Bomb into another Sludge Bomb, right? So I go out into Prim. And I know that even they go for Protect, it's going to fail. But they go for Substitute. I'm like, yeah, it's over. Like, it really is over because those are just going to heal behind the Substitute. They can stall out Protects, and then I can't get another Intimidate off. Landers is taking the poison damage. The Sludge Bomb's just adding up. Like, my opponent just played really well with the Substitute parts. Like, got Substitutes up whenever they needed it, and it's just like, yeah, there's really not anything that I could do. I think like if I was able to get a position where Lando was able to come in and again threaten a crit Sludge Bomb, I think like, oh, then maybe I have a chance to win, because you could always win against Dondozo if you like crit the right move, right? But now it's like because of the Substitute, the crit chance doesn't even like happen. So the problem is if I go Rillaboom, they're going to protect to get the leftovers in Grassy Terrain. If I go Incineroar, they're going to protect just to get the a KO on Incineroar, and if I like double out Incineroar on a Rillaboom, it doesn't really matter because they still get the leftovers of Grassy Terrain recovery. So I'm like, I'm faster with both Pokemon. Can I crit the Wood Hammer? Which I don't even think crit Wood Hammer would KO at this point, but I'm like, I mean, this is like my only odds, right? Like, unless I go for a Grassy Glide plus Grassy Glide or Grassy Glide crit plus like Sludge Bomb crit the Dondozo. I would only do that if I was like Terra Poison, but because I'm Terra Steel, I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna go for Sludge Bomb and Wood Hammer crit. I'm expecting them to just protect and then go for the Wave Crash again, and then it's like, yeah, that's pretty much not much I can do. So, yeah, the Glim Tech with the Custom Berry and the Endure really just messing it up here as they go for Protect with Dondozo. Like to be expected, it's like, what else are they gonna do? Like, I guess next turn I can protect Wood Hammer and then Grassy Glide Sludge Bomb, but because they're gonna get so much recovery off the Grassy Terrain plus the leftovers, I'm like, yeah, like I think even if I crit the Dondozo at this point with the Sludge Bomb, I'm pretty sure that it would live because it would probably be near full health even if I do all that sequencing. So like, I pretty much know it's over at this point. Because the Dozo's just too healthy. It's definitely, if it was in Wood Hammer crit range earlier, it's definitely not anymore. So I'm gonna go for like Sludge Bomb plus Wood Hammer. Yeah, it's like this was just a tough one because it's like about like preventing the Custom Berry Mortal Spin off into Primarina as well as Landorus. If I'm able to prevent that, the game's like way more easier. But it's like, okay, is it Terra Grass? Glim. Maybe I should have went for Sludge Bomb. I don't even think Sludge Bomb KOs the Glim, unfortunately. And I still get threatened by like Mortal Spin otherwise. So like, yeah, it just seemed really rough here. Unironically, Glim plus Tinglu was actually a really rough combination here. And then this Dondozo was just able to take advantage afterward. I go for Sludge Bomb Wood Hammer. And yeah, I just don't think Wood Hammer crit was knocking out the Dondozo. It would have done like, I think slightly under. As Body Press is revealed, I'm like, wait, it's Body Press is the last move? It's not even Order Up. And I'm like, wait. I was like, I'm pretty sure I saw Attack Booster. So I'm like, wait, was this Defense Booster and I just missed it? I was like very confident it was Attack Booster. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, the game's over at this point anyway. Like, Wood Hammer crit maybe even could knock out Dondozo. But even if it does, like, Incineroar is going down this turn. It can't even really punish the Tatsu. There's still a Tinglu in the back. Like, the Wood Hammer recoil is adding up. There's like nothing I can do at this point. So I know the game's over. But yeah, really cool tech though. It's actually funny because I did use like Dondozo plus Tatsu, Tinglu, and Glamora before. I never really thought about the Endure Custom Berry strat on this kind of team. I mean, that's super sick. And if I ever played my SBL team, if I was ever able to get it somehow, because I don't think I'm ever getting that team again, that would actually be like a really cool like tech that I would have been able to use in that tournament. Because that is actually a really cool tech. I got to give props to my opponent for it at least. Well, on the bright side, the last battle didn't really impact at least the number 1 standing because it was the only game we did lose, but we were still able to win the tournament. I mean, it is pretty good balanced team overall. It's just Primarina over Urshifu. It doesn't have like the immediate offensive capabilities that Urshifu does have, and of course hitting to protect, but the fact that set up on the Primarina, kind of like similar to Calm Mind Raging Bolt, with really good defensive typing, the ability to just stick around after a few Calm Minds with the support from the Intimidate was really cool. We were able to really utilize a bunch of like what this team could do, especially with like the Misty Terrain, which was like really awesome. And the Primarina was able to set up like a few Calm Minds, was able to destroy some opponents. Overall, really cool team, was able to have a lot of fun. And I really want to give again huge shout outs to Matthias as well as Superstar Pearl for doing so well, creating a really fun team and allowing me to showcase it on the channel. So if you want to go check them out, I will link them in the description down below. Really fun team. And I was even debating about bringing it to the regional when Matthias like went 8-0 day 1. Like it was just a really strong team across the board. And yeah, like the fact that Primarina was able to do a lot here. The Water Fairy is just such a great typing. It does have again a bit of weaknesses because of its low physical defense, but still, like you can't really complain about like the toolkit that it does have access to. Again, if you want to check them out, down below in the description. If you want to try out the paste, down below in the description. And of course, subscribe to the channel for more VGC content as always.